the different versions of like what we consider like body positivity and body neutrality just have changed so much since the early 2000s to now, and I'm hoping it still does continue to change. But the biggest thing I remember growing up was like I was very skinny as a child. I was very fit. I was very athletic. I could do all the sports. Like I loved that stuff. And my mom always praised my body, like kind of to a degree that I don't think I would say doesn't really occur for most people. And so
Hello everyone, and welcome again to Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander. I'm your host, Bruce Alexander. Putting the real me out there is an important part of my practice of being authentic. Especially within the parameters of this, as host of this show, it is especially important that I take the commitment very seriously. I respect this space of authenticity way too much to be measured in my sincerity. As facilitator of this space, I am an open book. And my guest today, Kalyn Bree, host of the podcast, What Do We Call This Podcast, put that theory to the test when I went on her show. More about Kalyn after today's reflection. Who is your person? When things go sideways or the stuff hits the fan, who is your go-to phone call? Mine has been Kate for over 15 years. But here's the twist. Sometimes things would go sideways and I wouldn't make the call. I would be scared or confused or in some other way need help. Why wouldn't I call? The answer, as bad as things might get, a fear of something worse always loomed. What if this time it's too much? Could this be the thing that makes her see how much I actually suck? Learning to overcome those thoughts, allowing my partner to be my lifeboat when the waters rise above my head has taken and will continue to take a lot of deep self-work. I'm so very much less afraid of making that call now, but I am a continued work in progress. In conclusion, I guess what I really want to reflect on is, are you truly authentic with at least one person in your life? Is there someone who you let share the burden of how bad it really is? There was a large part of my life when I wouldn't even let myself see the darkness in the nooks and the crannies of my soul. So I wasn't even consciously aware of how fake I was being every day. That was a hard realization. But from there, everything I have built is to last. It's on a solid foundation. Share your thoughts with me on Instagram, Facebook, or Threads on the episode 17 reflection, and let me know if you have shared that burden. I'll be the first one to tell you that it is okay, wherever you are in your journey to self-acceptance and authentically sharing yourself with the world. I have been there. Facing the enormity of your secrets and lies is the first step. If you've taken that step and need help on where to go, comment step 2, and I will reach out to you in about a one step at a time process of claiming your authentic identity. As I'm writing this, though, I have so much love for my audience, and I know how hard it can be to take that first step. If you comment help or step 1, I will contact you to set up a completely free, no strings attached coaching session focused solely on beginning your first step. I never want anyone to have to keep hurting that much, and I know how to help because I've been there before. Now let's get into today's show because it's not time to cry. Yet. Who knows what the future of this episode holds, though, because our guest today is Kalyn Bree. She's the host of, like I said, the What Do We Call This Podcast. A successful podcaster by all my metrics, with over 8 times more social followers and a 5-star rating on Spotify. I don't know where I will sit when this airs, but as I'm writing this, I can't really call my 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts legit because of my 4 reviews, 2 are my wife and daughter, respectfully. Shout out to my biggest fans. But what I have learned is that podcasting is hard. 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3, and 90% of what's left will quit after 20 episodes. If I'm correct, I was Kalyn's 20th episode, putting her in the top 1% of podcasters. Despite all of this, Kalyn shared with me that I helped her. Like many that have come on this show, for Kalyn, success hasn't canceled out imposter syndrome. She shared with me that I inspired her to be less shy about reaching out to other podcasters in spite of the imposter syndrome. I want to share this about Kalyn. In a community of thousands of podcasters who all struggle with the same things, Kalyn was the first to make me feel seen. If audience is like currency to podcasters, I have been an awful investor, I guess. I freely offer my audience to anyone willing to be honest and vulnerable for the benefit of a more authentic world, and engaging content to help others grow and heal. Kalyn was the first podcaster who looked at what I was doing and said, I love this, and I would love to have you on. It was a very welcome opportunity to advance my mission of making the world a safer environment for authenticity. My first podcast guest spot. Kalyn's free spirit and go with the flow attitude made it so comfortable to share some of the hardest parts of my story, and I hope to replicate that same ambiance on my show. With that, I welcome to my show, with the utmost appreciation and mutual respect, Kalyn Bree. Thank you for being here, Kalyn.
Oh my gosh, that was such an introduction. I'm like blushing internally. I'm like, hopefully I don't look too red, but it just made me feel so special. And who doesn't want to feel special?
Absolutely. And that's a big part of my platform is letting people know that they've affected me. If they don't hear from anywhere else, they're going to know that they've had an effect on me because, in this world today, we need to hear it as often as possible, right?
Yeah, of course. It's such like an altruistic need as humans. Like, I don't even want to say that because it makes it sound like it's for the benefit of something else, but it's truly just like we're social creatures, and it's great to know that we have that effect on others and that there are others out there plenty who can have that effect on us, and it's just so special. And then there was something, let's see, you mentioned your 5-star reviews, and you're like, of the two of those, it's my wife and my daughter, and it doesn't matter. That's so special. Like,
yeah.
What better people in your life to be rooting for you than those two? I think that's awesome.
I do have to agree with that. My wife's support especially has been really, really important to me doing this because, I spent a lot of time on it. And if she did not support me, it would definitely be not fun. My daughter also very important support. Yeah. I love it. So before we get too far into it, can you tell the audience in your own words who you are, how you spend your time, and why you think I invited you on the show?
Who I am. Okay. You're going to have to remind me of some of those prompts because I'm going to go on a few tangents.
Oh, that's perfectly okay.
Well, I'm a gal in her mid-20s, currently traveling full-time with my partner. So that's kind of been what's taking up most of my time. I think our biggest focus so far has been trying to immerse ourselves more in a community. We started out our travels kind of moving every 2 weeks, and what we found was that by the 10-day period we started to feel comfortable in a place and really started to recognize the people that we were seeing for the places we wanted to frequent, whether it was a really good restaurant or the elote cart on the side of the road that's there at 7 p.m. on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We would get that comfortability, and then it was time to leave 3 days later or 4 days later. And so now, we're really honing in on okay, if we're going to do this full-time travel thing, we want to get to know the people in the community. And it's been really cool. And that's I guess the recent thing going on in my life. But I have a podcast that Bruce mentioned, and that's been a passion project of mine that I think has always kind of been burning for me, or had a little bit of a pilot light going on since I want to say freshman year of college, and I think that would have been 2017 when I first started listening to podcasts and was navigating the college life and just all the stuff that gets thrown at you that typically isn't talked about in high school, whether that's sex and relationships or the kinds of things that do happen at parties. People go to parties in high school too, so it's not it was the most fresh thing, but it's just different level of it. And so I found a lot of comfort in some of the podcasts that a few mentors had recommended to me. And since then I've always had the thought in the back of my mind oh, it'd be so cool to do this and provide that to people. I just don't know what kind of I don't know, I'm always looping back to questioning credibility or certification or whatever, and it's all these things that ultimately don't matter at the end of the day. There are people out there who don't have any kind of formal proper college degree and are making huge differences in the world. So it's just discovering the different versions we can make our differences that don't solely rely on whatever license or whatever degree. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. I struggled with similar things.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's just an overarching summary of like some of the stuff I'm passionate about with like how do we even navigate ourselves in this world? How do we navigate our relationships? How do we navigate our friendships? I guess we could say just relationships in general, romantic and not, whether that's the relationship with your mom, the relationship with your dad, the relationship with like an abusive family member, and how you want to move forward with that kind of stuff. And yeah, I just hope that I'm able to like reach one person. Like truly, if I could just reach like one person, I guess that would be like the main aim in my podcast. But even here today, like getting to guest on yours, like if we could reach one person and have them feel like really heard and seen, like I would feel like I've done my job. And like there's no, obviously money in the reality that we're in is to an extent something we need, but like making that difference would just totally trump all monetary value with like serving whatever purpose in life, I guess.
No, I completely agree. I've said that multiple times on this podcast, is that if one person feels seen or feels like they were helped to find their authentic self through my podcast, then like I've been a success. Now, does that mean it's gonna, put food in my kids' mouths? No. So I'd like to be a success, monetarily as well, but it definitely feeds my soul to know that, people like you and I are out here trying to make a difference, and hopefully we are. So that, I think that answers the question pretty fully. But since we're on the topic of your podcast, you kind of go everywhere on your podcast, and for me, I try to stay pretty specific for what I'm trying to do, but I love that you are willing to really talk about anything. In your bio, though, one of the things that you mentioned as like your passions to talk about is parenthood. You don't have any kids. What is it about parenthood? I went pretty in depth into like some parenthood stuff whenever I was on your podcast, about how important I think it is to show up authentically as parents. What is it about parenthood that you think is so interesting to talk about?
I guess the first motivation for me to mention that, or the first motivation for any of it, would come from a more like selfish perspective of like, well, I know I want to have kids, so it's something I'm already thinking about and interested in, and have for the most part always felt pretty darn sure of, which I'm not saying that's how it is for everyone. Like this isn't everyone should have kids agenda. Like I hear plenty of stories of people who are like, yeah, we're like a dual income, no kids household, and it's great. And I'm like, great for you. Like, I'm glad you're happy, like no propaganda here. Just my own personal, like, I know what I want. Like, I'm excited. Like, I just feel like I have such like just like a need to care and a need to like nourish. And I can't wait for that to come up. And with that, I recently, let's see, the podcast started, I think, in April 2023. And a lot of people in my life have been having babies within the last year or two. And it's just been really cool to get to talk to people and like their different experiences. Like I had we just call each other cousins. In the episode, we dive into whatever our family tree actually is and how we're actually related. But cousin for all intensive purposes. I had her on and we got to talk about her like natural home birth. And I'm very fascinated by that. I think it's a really great alternative for, that being accessible to people that are able to do that. So, there's an element of passion there, pre-parenthood, just with like our healthcare system, I guess, particularly in the US, and how scary childbirth can be for a lot of women, and then take that a step further for women in minority groups. So the passion kind of starts there with like women's health. I guess that's why like the sexuality thing can sort of, begin to tie into like the parenthood thing with, childbirth and healthcare along the way. But then, diving into parenthood.
So far, what I've gleaned from you and parenthood is that you're a very hopeful, mother to be in the future at some point. Are you just trying to collect the best information you can get, kind of as research for whenever you start your parenthood journey?
Yeah. I guess it's like
Yeah.
a case study collection of some kind, but like less scientific or less like, weird research is, yeah, I think that's kind of the best way to put it into words that I honestly haven't been able to yet. I just think it's really cool, and I feel like there's so much more stuff coming out with like mental health and like the different types of like disorders that are out there, and like what kind of stuff did you experience as a kid that you feel has like shaped your life, and coming to terms with that kind of stuff, like personally, like with my parents, and like I can still recognize like how how much they provided me as a kid, and like we talk about this, and they have their own experiences with their parents and so on and so forth. And so I think I just get excited about it because I see like what my mom was able to do raising us as a single mom before like getting remarried, and then like seeing our dad more frequently again, and just like coming to terms with just like the different types of relationships we have with our parents in childhood, because not everything is like the perfect nuclear family that's like portrayed to us.
Yeah.
And also how those relationships start to shift into adulthood. Like there's a big element of like letting go, and I think even before we like grow up and like enter adulthood, like I feel like I hear so many parents mention like just being able to like let go is like such a big thing with like making stuff not so stressful. Um, with raising children, and I just feel like that's an ongoing thing even into adulthood, and I don't know. I'm just interested in it, and there's like, so much you can dive into. Like I have a friend who wasn't raised by her mom and dad. She, in like any capacity, she was raised by grandparents. And what that experience has been for her going into adulthood with like an older generation, and speeding up the process of figuring out in-home care and that kind of stuff. This is a tangent, but it's just like the overall like focus on how those relationships change, and like how you can really nurture them to your
If you
best
could
ability,
choose,
like
which it's pretty
from the
hard to
beginning.
actually like choose exactly what
I just think it's
it
really
looks
cool.
like, but if you could choose your parenthood journey, what would it look like?
Where I'm at now, which I'm I definitely don't feel ready to have kids yet. That's definitely, a few years down the line, I would say. But where I'm at now with like what sounds really awesome to me, like definitely, maybe not to the extreme that like say my cousin went, not maybe not an extreme to her, but an extreme to me of like doing a full home birth and that kind of thing. Like she did a home water birth, and like I got to see the video. It was so cool, like super beautiful, like one of the most like just like natural primal things I've ever seen, and I thought that was really awesome. And I'm like, okay, like I could see myself doing like a water birth, but maybe I want to do it at a birthing center instead of at home, and like having like, a mixture of that kind of thing. But then moving into parenthood, like I feel like there's a lot of stuff out there with like schooling in particular, and I don't think I'm necessarily there yet with like what kind of schooling would I want to do and that kind of thing, because that's other people who are having an
Yeah.
influence on your children's life that like I just haven't even gotten. I know you mentioned you homeschool, right? Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I haven't even gotten to like how I'd want to do that yet. I think it's cool that you do that. I feel like I hear a lot of cool stories about um the different ways people like integrate that into their lives and that kind of thing, but purely just from like the parenting standpoint, I think like there's like so much stuff about like gentle parenting, but then it's like how do you do that in the right way without it being something of like you know, you gotta teach like consequences of your actions, but then also like not having such like a like authority, like punishment based type of relationship with your kid, as opposed to like mutual understanding and respect for one another, like just on like a human level. Like I remember when you came on, you said something along the lines of like how intuitive children are, and that just totally prevails. Like I think about that the most, more than anything, whenever I think about being a parent, and just how to like
Okay.
I'm gonna go on another tangent here. Have you ever been in like have you ever been in like a workplace situation, or like we'll just say workplace situation, where like someone of higher authority just totally demands respect and is just like a total tyrant, and like thought to yourself, like, definitely. Now why the F would I want to listen to that person? Like it doesn't really cultivate like a great learning environment. So it's like, why would you do that with your kids? You know what I mean? So I think a lot about like how to make it known that I'm going to be a safe space for them to come to no matter what, with like body safety, body image, like the way we talk about ourselves and that kind of thing, but also like how to teach them those consequences and actions like lesson without punishing them for something. Like I think that's kind of what I'm getting at when I'm mentioning gentle parenting. I'm obviously not a pro at it, so I'm not like a child psychologist. I don't have all the right terms to like use to like Kalyn, coin what I'm trying to like
even
really,
if you had all the right
put out
terms
there for your question,
and you've
but
done
like
all the research, kids come along and they slap all the books out of your hands, and they really, they put all that stuff that you think you understand to the test. And I think what's really important about what you're saying is that you're thinking about so many more things than I was before I became a parent. And I definitely started as a parent way earlier than I should have, way less prepared than I should have been, I wasn't taking it seriously enough. It's as much as a job as you make it, but to me that's a good thing. Like I want to work at being a parent. I want to get better. I want to take that time to improve, and I try to study on it. I could study more. I could study a lot more. But I appreciate talking to somebody who is thinking about these things many years before they're ready to have children. Because if you were to have a child, like our first kid was 5 years before I thought I was going to be ready for a kid, and we weren't prepared for that at all. And we had to get ready really quick. I feel like that's not going to be such a huge leap. Also, on the whole home birth thing, 3 out of 4 of our kids were born at home. So I'm definitely on the home birth support train. Love to hear it. My wife can give you plenty of information on it if you ever want more, because it is it is really a great experience. And for somebody who doesn't like being in the hospital, that works really well for both of us, because you get to stay in your own home. But birthing centers are also a great option as well. I'm not going to tell anybody else how to do what they need to do, but for us, it was such a great experience to be able to be at home. The first birth, we had our midwife with us for like 20 hours. So it's being somewhere else uncomfortable whenever you can be at your home, and still uncomfortable, but at least as comfortable as you can be while birthing a child. I definitely encourage it. Getting a little more into talking about like your parenting journey, how have you had these conversations with your partner?
Yeah, maybe not to the degree that not to the degree that I like just word vomited it at you. What you and your listeners just got was like Kalyn's internal monologue on a daily basis.
As long as you keep asking that question,
do this
you're doing
so I don't
good.
totally mess up my children.
Never quit asking, how do I not mess up my kids?
So it's like that's like really what's like up in my dome, just like rattling around among so many other things. The core pieces of it are definitely like things that we've talked about with like I mean, definitely like the home birthing thing. We both hate hospitals. That's like, something we have in common. But like for the parenting side of it, it's just like we both come from families that got divorced and or separated or however you want to like phrase it. And we just have both always been really good, like pretty much from the start of our relationship, about like talking about like here are the things that like I remember seeing as a kid. For me, it was a little bit younger when my parents separated. He was a little bit older, and we'll share like here are the things that we saw with like what went wrong, like even just on the relationship level. We're like, if your foundation isn't pretty much solid from the get-go, like it's gonna be really hard to like continue making a really good like nurturing, nourishing space for like new beings, So like the main focus of what him and I like to talk about is like it's so much more like relationship focused because we're still so young and like still pretty fresh in our relationship, is in terms of like how relationships go. Like it doesn't feel that way. Like we always joke about like how it's crazy how like we felt like we've always known each other so long, but like at the end of the day, we've been together like just about a year and a half, maybe a little bit more than a year and a half. I can't be doing math right now. So it's like recognizing the things that we saw as kids and like what didn't feel very good and like what kind of still prevails now. Like, for example, I find myself like anytime like conflict arises, I shut down. Like I'm silent. I get like, sweaty and nervous and like heart rate goes up and I just want to go inward and it's very avoidant. And that can be really frustrating for him when we have a conflict, and that's something I recognize in myself that I remember seeing as a child, what was modeled for me. So a lot of the focus now for whenever we talk about like the stuff that would apply to parenting is just like working on how we want to handle conflicts with one another that will then apply to like handling conflicts with like
I think that's a great
something
method,
of our future children.
Instead of talking about kids right now, let's talk
question?
about our relationship and talk about how we can make this strong and then build from there. And I completely agree that it is so important to have I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, like my wife and I, like I said, we weren't ready to have kids. We still argue a good amount because we're very different people. We have like our brains work very, very differently. And so just our basic understanding of the world is different. And so whenever you have the responsibilities of sharing a house and parenting kids and financial responsibility and all those things, the way you view the world really has a lot of bearing. And whenever I think something should go one way and she thinks it should go another way, and we both just operate that way because that's what humans do. Like they work as their brain, tells them that they should figure things out. And then those things don't line up, then an argument sometimes ensues. And having those arguments in front of your kids it's a soul crushing thing. Like not being able to, rein that in and say, let's talk about this like adults. And here's the thing, it's great that when we can do that, and we do that sometimes. Like, don't get me wrong, we're not like knock down, drag out all the time, but sometimes there's, and what is it, an immovable force or an unstoppable force comes against an immovable object. We're often that because we're both very hard-headed. And so then, then our kids get to watch us argue, and that's not my favorite thing at all. But having a strong relationship, and especially figuring out how you are going to resolve conflict early in your relationship anyways, but early in your, parenthood journey, when you first have kids, whatever, because I promise you, it only gets more stressful. Like, I'm not going to say more stressful. It gets more interesting. There's just more things added to the equation. So as you're adding more things to the equation, it gets more interesting, right? It's more complex. So solving it, whenever there's not that constant of here's how we are going to, deal with conflict when it arises, it gets more difficult. So yeah, I really think that's awesome, and especially for a couple who's only been together for a year and a half. where does that thought process come from for you guys, for you to even have those conversations as a, I know that the generation coming up under me, because I'm almost 40 years old, you're in your mid 20s, you guys, you're just different about the way that you talk about things. You're more open with mental health. You're more open with, building a future
Mm-hmm.
together. Like you're traveling the world with somebody you've been together with just over a year. So I'm guessing this started right about a year together. You guys started traveling the world. Like that's a really big jump that I never would have been okay making. And I'm happy for you that you were able to do that, but that's just a whole different way of thinking. Like, where does that come from?
Uh, I guess just like, well, I'm gonna express like gratitude for like how how emphasized it was by my parents to just like do what makes you happy. With that being said, like they really really like emphasized that. And with that being said, there was always like a little bit of a flavor of like, you know, make sure you have a roof over your head, make sure you have a career and that kind of thing. And I thought that was what I wanted because like that was all I kind of really ever understood. Um and I saw them do it and I was like, okay, like yeah, I could see this. And then like after having a job that while the people were really awesome, within the company itself, I know maybe we'll dive into some of the other stuff I mentioned to you last night, like a little bit later, but like the company itself and the people that I worked with like day to day were really awesome. And like that environment was really cool. The nature of the work itself and like working the 7 to 3 shift day in, day out, doing like really physical labor was like really mentally taxing. And I guess like, having this opportunity to travel together for this amount of time and like really talk about like what our life priorities are was kind of where it all stemmed
No,
from.
that's okay. That's okay.
So I feel like I'm kind of all over the place here. This
Yeah.
happens a lot.
No,
I'm so sorry.
you kind of what I picked up there.
Does any of that make sense? Do you want me to loop back on anything? Because okay, cool.
Your work experience had given you enough information to kind of not really BS whenever it came to your relationship. You kind of wanted to make it clear what was important to you in that aspect, at least, because you had enough to figure out with what you wanted to do with your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, I mean, that job in particular was like a big lesson of like, here's what I don't want, particularly with scheduling as someone who like can't just do the same thing over and over and over again. Like it just gets really like, I need stimulation, something new to like focus on, something new to be like stoked about. But that can be a slippery slope, of course, but like, just like having maybe more of like a project based mind as opposed to like a day in, day out, same tasks 5 days a week type deal. But like, yeah, you mentioned like knowing what you want. That's also knowing what you don't want. And I feel like we've just been really good about like talking about that with each other. Like it's funny like being this young and like I've only been in serious relationships. Like I've dated a little bit in between each relationship, but like not for too long a period of time. Like, nothing like super extreme. So I have like 2 other past examples before the current relationship I'm in where I'm like, here's what I definitely don't want, you know what I mean? And it's like hard because we are still so young and there's only still so much that we like both know and also all the other crap we don't know. So it's like just like always talking it through together and just day by day getting better about like mentioning when there's something that I wasn't very fond of with like the way something was phrased or like the way we approached like bringing up something to the other person or whatever. Like I feel like I tend to have this really bad habit of like as soon as something's like looming in the back of my mind, like I will bring it up at even the like worst of times, as opposed to like recognizing like, okay, maybe I should like make sure we both have the space to like talk about this first. Like talking to someone about something that I'm angry about first thing in the morning is probably not the best way to go about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not to say that I'm obviously the only one like doing that kind of like more problematic stuff. Like we both have our flaws, but I can only out myself for that, you know, like overall it's all like really solid, but like we all have our struggles and that kind of thing. And the stuff that like you mentioned with you and your wife, like you both see the world differently. You're both pretty stubborn, like you're man and woman, man and wife, you know, like it's just like it's the opposites. It's like it's the sun and the moon, it's the light and the dark, like it's hard to even like find that common ground. So I think like that's kind of just like the biggest focus is like, well, here's the way I see things, and then like hearing him say, well, here's the way I see things, and then like
whenever I was
out
your
how
age,
we want to like bring it
when
up
I was
to one
25,
another.
my wife was 20, 21, and you know, as we were talking about getting serious or like getting more serious, I was like really committed to this theory that she was not even, I was like, you're not even who you're going to be for the rest of your life yet. You're not even close. Like until you're 25, you're still like, you're basically still baking. Like I was very committed to this theory. And I was like, I'm afraid to like get married and you change and us not be right for each other anymore. I feel like it was kind of a narrow-minded theory, but at the same time, looking back, you know, that 20 like almost 20 years later, I was right. Like she wasn't who she was going to be, but also neither was I. I thought because I was 25, I was pretty well baked and I was done. Turns out you keep growing. Like you never really stop. And I mean, I guess you can. And if you do stop, then likely your other is going to keep growing without you. And that's, you know, that's a scary thing. And you're going to grow apart. Or what I've learned is that we've grown apart at times and we've had to grow back together. And that is, you know, the growing back together is almost like trellising a plant, or, you know, like kind of setting it back on a path, like having a vision to where you want to grow and like working back towards that, and, you know, having to use tools to accomplish that. Do you have any fear of being so committed to somebody? I mean, like you're overseas together, you know, you're talking about what the future looks like with kids. I don't know what, like, I know that marriage has kind of lost some of the luster for the younger generation. I think it's very important to me, but have you talked about marriage? Are you worried about growing your identity not being really fully formed yet, and that being like affecting how you guys grow together? Is that stuff that you've thought about at all?
Yeah, I think about it all the time. It was something maybe we talked about just over a month ago when we were still in Mexico. So we're in Costa Rica now. We had traveled Mexico for a month doing that whole situation. And like, I currently don't like money, always the root of all evil. I currently don't have a job. And so I remember like confiding in him one day and just saying like, I'm so scared of like not having this figured out yet, because like I'm, you know, I have like a good savings situation figured out for this. Like I didn't just go into it without like having that security blanket. But even before we left, we had talked about like, what do I need to do to get to that point to feel comfortable doing this while solely relying on him for like the financial side of things. And it's like, that's like a big thing to be doing while we're in our mid-20s and like still in like the like fresh stages of like a relationship, you know? With that being said, like, I think what we've both learned from like past relationships has just been like, you know, prioritizing like the individual things that you still like to do. Like I like my pole dancing, he loves rock climbing. Right now it's been kind of a different situation with traveling because not all that stuff is accessible, but like making sure that like each person has like their set time for themselves and that kind of deal, but then like also like supporting one another and like the different stuff they want to try out, because the stuff we're trying to do now is definitely not what we'll be doing 30 years from now. Like, I guess if we're going to talk about it from like a career standpoint, but like, you know, even just like the relationship stuff, like marriage and like, you know, just being so into it at this point, like we've talked about it and it's something like, I don't know, it's easy for me to fall into like the mindset of like, well, I'd like that in like the next year or two, but then it's like also not that big of a stressor because it's just going to happen when it's going to happen. Like, I think my biggest mindset, like the biggest mindset shift I've had with what you mentioned with like the whole psychology thing of like your brain's done developing by this time and then from there you're who you are, and it's like it's so easy to like,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you know,
we've been together.
Obviously, you predicted that, and you see, did you say 20 years later? You guys have been married for 20 years?
We've been married for 13 years.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, like, you did see that, and, like, I recognize that that is something that's possible, but, like, the biggest thing I also focus on is, like, I don't want to say, like, a counter-argument because that sounds, like, negative, but, like, my thought process to, like, counter like the well why do it now type of thing, which I don't think we're going to be doing that now or anything like that, but like you and your wife almost 20 years later are two very different people. 10 years from now that is still going to be the case, and it could be in a totally different way, you know what I mean? Like you see that with like you hear the same type of story, like, okay, my parents got together when they were very young, oops, they had me, they got married, had my brother, divorced a few years later. They were super young, had a lot of stuff that like they still wanted to figure out about themselves, and like, you know, other stuff along the way that I don't want to share, but that's like one end of the spectrum with like getting married super young. But then you also hear people who
that's okay,
have been married. I don't mean this as a way to be like, oh, this is gonna happen to you. I just mean like totally different example. Like you hear about people who've been married for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't think this is what I want anymore, and then that happens, you know? Like people we're always changing, like there's always going to be that possibility. So I feel like my mindset is just like, why not just fully love right now and like totally enjoy like how into each other, how like stoked we are about one another, like how loving and caring this relationship feels. Like, why not lean into that and just like navigate everything as it comes, because inevitably it's going to. Like 50% of marriages end in divorce, you know? Like it's there's always going to be the odds are always stacked against us if we're going to like bring marriage into the mix. So it's like my mindset is just like, let's just try it out. If it fails, it fails. If not, great, that's what we wanted, you know what I mean? It sounds a little starry-eyed and romantic, but I feel like it's also pretty realistic, because it's like, you could argue what better time than now, but it's also like, well, if we're really sure about one another and we know like at some point like we do want to get married and have kids and whatever, and like I also don't even have like the like time frame in my mind of like marriage and then kids. Like I don't care if we have kids first and then get married, like that kind of thing. It's just like an overall,
I guess life is weird.
Let's
That's
just see
definitely
where it
true.
goes.
I feel like you know
life's freaking weird.
we kind of fail to realize at times that relationships are all about just leaps of faith, like over and over again. Like, you know, you're making these choices to trust somebody that you don't know that they're going to be who or what you think they are. I just think that for us, marriage takes it to the next level of not only am I going to make a leap of faith and trust you, I'm going to commit to, like, for us, marriage isn't something that we look at, even though both of our parents are divorced, and we say we're going to divorce at some point, even though, you know, we've gotten angry, and previously, like the past year or two, we threw that word around a lot. And as we've grown and we've gotten more open with our communication, we both just know that we want to do life together. Like we're committed to doing it with each other, and that's gonna look different many times, and that's okay. we're just going to both commit to, if we grow apart, we're going to commit to doing the work and growing back together. Because I know that she's my best friend, and I know that I'm hers. So why would I want to do it with anybody else? Like, I'd rather do the work with her and fix the problem than try to start over with somebody else and maybe never get any part of what we had together. I just, so yeah, that's just my little, not my little love story to our love story, is that I just, I appreciate the fact that you're willing to kind of make these big leaps of faith, and you're doing them on a truncated scale. Like, you're just doing it faster because things have come in a way that they've kind of, lined up for you to do them faster. So why not? Like, why not travel together? Why not, move in together? Why not, he's supporting you, and I'm sure that's a huge leap of faith for both of you, that you're not going to take advantage of him and that he's not going to use it to control you. Like, that's the big leap of faith.
Yeah.
So yeah, good for you.
No, it's worlds different to even see. It's hard because it's not like I'm here to like try to shit talk an ex or anything. Like, I'll peace all love to the. It's just funny to see like how, and obviously focusing on comparisons is not a good thing either, but just like seeing how it's so clear to me how sure we each feel about one another with my partner now. And I've also been on the other side of it where you shouldn't be questioning. You shouldn't be questioning, does this person like me?
Right.
Do they want to be with me? Do they want to support me? Like, I feel like those are all very basic things in a relationship that are so like base level and necessary that like if that's even something you're questioning, your foundation probably isn't very solid. So it's just like seeing the two differences and how like, I don't know, like I really do feel so loved and so special and so like not controlled or not like, it's just support. It's just like, it's like pure support, and it's just like on a whole nother plane of like recognizing what I'm able to rely on. And like you said, it is just on a totally different time frame. Like, person before dated for a few years and there was never really like a clear moment of realizing like how sure they felt about me. They were never sure about me, is like the way I interpret it, the way I came to peace with like whenever that relationship did end. And so it's just like, I don't know, recognizing like, if you have, I'm such a big believer in like trusting your gut, and like my gut has not led me astray so far in my 24 years of life, which is not a lot, but it hasn't like so I don't know, it's like it's again, it sounds so starry-eyed and that kind of thing, and it's so funny because he's like the much more like logical, like brainy, heady like piece in our relationship in terms of like, if we're gonna talk puzzle pieces, but like we really do balance each other out in that way. But it's like we're still able to express how, well, like just on a different plane that it feels. I don't know, like I always laughed or like scoffed or like honestly judged a little bit of like hearing my mom say, when you know, with like who you're gonna be with, if we're talking operating in like a monogamy mindset, like you just know when you know. And I remember thinking like, that's so silly, but then I would see like the relationship that her and my stepdad have, and I'm like, there's got to be like some truth to this, because like I see what they have and like it prevails, it totally does. So I guess I'll trust that. And when it comes, it comes. And then it came, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm 24. Oh, sorry. Okay. Don't say these bad words. I'm getting into the heat of it. Yeah, it came along, and I'm like, whoa, I'm 24, and now I'm feeling this, and we've had that conversation together. We met on a dating app, like, what? And now we're traveling the world together a year and a half later? I'm sorry, like, we still laugh about it. We were at the beach a few days ago, and I say to him every so often, and I'm like, isn't it weird that we met on a
Yeah.
dating app and
So
now we're here. And he's like,
tie this back into
dude, I don't get
authenticity,
it.
because that's what my show's about. I think that it's important to really highlight the fact that
Yes.
meeting in a dating app, moving fast, doing all the things that you've done has been you, like you said, trusting your gut and living your life in an authentic way where you, instead of trying to do what everybody else has done or what everybody else would generally prescribe to, you said, this feels more right to me. This
Mhm.
feels like how I should be living my life. And you've been brave enough to do that. And that's not something that everybody can say.
Yeah, it's wild. It's funny, like even like up until we left, it was funny realizing like how many people I actually felt safe like talking to about like this crazy adventure that we were gonna go on, and really like taking in that like data from other people based off of like the reactions they had. And like it was actually pretty surprising. Obviously negative stuff, the way that our brains are wired, like definitely sticks out more, but in terms of like numbers, when I think about most people that I was talking to, it usually wasn't a very good reaction. It was like a, oh my gosh, you're gonna go do that? Like, you feel comfortable doing that? Like, that kind of reaction. And the people that, the fewer numbers that had the opposite reaction to that, the people that were really excited and like stoked and like, oh my gosh, like recognizing like that's not for me, but I think it's cool you guys are doing that. Like those people, like, I don't know, you hear about these big life events like weddings or a baby coming along the way and that kind of thing in families that really bring out people's true colors. Like this was a much more mellow version of that, albeit, but a version of it where I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I think this confirmed the people that I know I'm going to have in my life forever. And I just thought that was really big. And like, with that, if we're going to tie it all back into like living authentically and just like really being yourself and trusting like the way you want to live your life, like really hold on to and like appreciate the people that are always stoked for you and get excited with you for like a promotion or like a new job that you're getting or like this big thing you're going to be trying or like a business you're starting. Like all the people that are going to be excited for you, those are the ones that freaking matter. Like if there's anything I could say, like that's
fear
been the
is like
biggest
obviously
like
the
recent
biggest
lesson.
opponent to living authentically. Like fear, anxiety, those things make it very difficult. Whenever those people were like trying to sow their
Yeah.
fear into you, how did you combat that?
Hmm. I don't even know if I really combated it. I think I just kind of like took it in as like, oh, that's like their reaction. Like maybe I felt like a little bit of disappointment of like, oh, they're not excited like I am, when who knows what's going on in their mind. Like I can't say what's going on for them. Like I only know what's going on for me with like the way I'm reacting to whatever's being said back or like whatever nonverbal things I'm taking in. But like I think I just like recognized like, well, of course we all want to do things differently. Like this isn't for everyone. Like I wasn't even sure if it was for me. I was just down to try something new because I was not enjoying the job that I had and needed a little push of how do I figure out how to do something different, that kind of thing. But like I don't know, combating those like opposing thoughts, it's hard. Like I think I was just like, if someone like countered it with like, oh, like aren't you nervous about like whatever, I can't think of a particular example right now. It's kind of just like shoved out of my brain space. I'm like, it takes up space that doesn't matter. Like, get it out of here. Whatever thing. Like, aren't you scared of X? Like, I'd just be kind of like, I mean, like, yeah, that's a possibility, but like, it's not happening now. And
So
I know
like,
I can
you said that
get
the
myself taken care
majority
of if
of
I need to,
the
if something were to
opinions that you
happen.
got were
Like
like
in whatever capacity that would
more
be.
towards the negative lean. So it's not a common way of thought. Like at least in your circle,
Mhm.
it wasn't the common, method to do these sorts of things. So, is it just that you have adopted a
Yeah.
mindset that allows you to not care about them, and not care about them, but not take their fears in, and wear their opinions?
Right, right, right. I mean, yeah, I'd say so. Like, there are definitely some things that like someone would bring up, and I'd even say like, "Oh yeah, that is something I've been thinking of," but like, who knows what's gonna, who knows what's gonna come of it? But like, uh, I think like whatever issue itself that whatever person like brought up wasn't even what
Yeah.
worried me. I think what worried me was like, damn, they're not excited for me because I know I'm a person who's always excited for others. And so it's disappointing, truly. Like, obviously, we put expectations on other people, and like, that's an unfortunate reality. And I think we all can be at fault to that. But like, I think that was honestly kind of the like biggest emotion that I remember thinking, and like the only thing that really stuck, like, for a few weeks after until I talked about that with my partner. And I'll get to that in a second actually, with the way that he like advised it. I really liked the way he thought about it, but yeah, it was just like, wow, they're not excited for me. Like, that sucks. I've been excited for them in the past for certain things, you know? Um so I guess like with the whole like showing true colors thing, it was more of like a, I don't know, like my best friend, like her and I have been able to openly talk about this, and she's like such an awesome like cheerleader, supportive friend who was like excited for me, but was also able to like own her authenticity and be like, that's not for me, dude. Like, me and my husband have talked about this, and that is not for us. And I was like, that's fine, dude. Like, I just appreciate that you were able to like recognize how excited I was for this, and that you were able to like, provide that in return, as opposed to being like judgmental
Yeah.
about it. Like, oh, like you're gonna do that with your life? Like, that totally wasn't what it was, as opposed to like some of the other undertones I got from other stuff, other people. But what I was gonna mention with my partner was like, you know, after a few times of like kind of starting to mention, I'm leaving company X, and we're going to be leaving at the end of June, and we're going to be doing this for 6 months to a year, depending on what we're able to like work out with visas and that kind of thing. Like, after bringing that up a few times to people and then recognizing the negative interactions, and then after, I guess, like collecting a few of those and kind of letting them like weigh down on me from like an emotional standpoint, I came to my partner and I was like, dude, it's so weird that so many people are having this reaction. Like, I feel like it's even silly for me to even talk about like the upcoming adventure we're going to have. And he was like, well, and I asked him like, how are you talking about this with other people? Like, how many people like back home for you know about this and that kind of thing? And he was like, the people that matter are the ones that know we're doing this. I don't talk about it with anyone else. So the people that he's very sure about, they're the ones he's talked to about it. And if no one else knows about it, like, clearly there was like whatever temp test for him to recognize, like, that doesn't matter, that they need to know. My family knows, my close friends know, that's it. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, I feel like I can be at fault for just like hoping the best in everyone and seeing the best in everyone, and then blabbing my mouth off. And I think that was kind of like what the difference was in what him
Is
and
he
I
an
were
introvert?
experiencing with like talking about our upcoming travels before we had left. Yeah.
It's really easy to say, like, I only tell the people that
Yep.
are super important to me, when you're an introvert. When you're an extrovert, you want to share what's going on with you with everybody. So of course, like, and exactly. So that's a much harder thing for us
Yeah,
to
and I want
do.
to hear
Like,
everything from
sure, just
everyone
don't talk
else.
about it. Okay, I guess I won't talk about it for 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna go tell somebody and be disappointed again. But that's okay. Like, that's totally all right. Um, so like, it seems like you've really been able to adopt this mindset where other people's fears are not something that you let determine anything about how you move throughout the world. But I know that, like, you told me that anxiety is something that you deal with. So that's your own fears, your brain's fears. Like, letting you, or shaping the way that you move. Can you talk about how you deal with your anxiety and fear of moving based on your own fears?
Yeah.
let's
Well, if we're
do it.
gonna go off of an origin story, let's go back to little baby Kalyn at like the age of probably even younger than like 9 years old, but this is like kind of the first time I remember it. And well, okay, first of all, I had my first panic attack at like 9 or 10 years old. And even before that, I was a really anxious kid. Whether that was like moving around a lot or following like my parents getting divorced or like, being in maybe like a little bit more of an unstable setting with like, I'm gonna be very vague just for like identity protection, I guess, with like, people not receiving hate and that kind of thing, but like navigating or being around abusive family members and that kind of thing, like in the mix of like my mom trying to figure out like how we were gonna continue about life with like just her working and like my dad not being around as much like in like the earlier years and that kind of stuff. I had my first panic attack at 10, and I say all that because who knows like what the cause of it is. Maybe it is just a genetic thing. Maybe it was like more of a nature versus nurture type situation. It probably was both, is probably what I would like to venture towards. And I remember like my mom coming over to me and like handing me this like bright purple journal and me just telling her like I don't know what's happening, like I can't breathe, this is really scary, like I'm a 10-year-old 9-10-year-old, I don't know what anxiety is, I just feel like I can't breathe. Who knows whatever I was thinking about right before that moment. Like I know I was alone in my room,
so this was not a
something with like my
situational
stuffed
anxiety
animals or
attack. This was
Barbies or whatever it was
that happened while you were in the
and
midst of doing nothing really, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's I think I would say like with you bringing that to light, like my anxiety is much more of like a heady thing. Like I think myself into like the bad, like not so great areas, like that's where I can induce my panic and that kind of thing. It's very heady. Like there are situational things sometimes, like social anxiety every so often, but not too bad. But like, definitely the heady stuff. But yeah, I remember her like handing me that journal and her just saying like, write down what you were thinking about like right before this happened, and write down what you're thinking about like after you've calmed down from it. And like ever since that point, I've like been able to like recognize when one's like coming on and that kind of thing. But then like we move like how many years later is that, like 14 years later to where I am now. And it feels a lot different now, where like I can catch it and like recognize like the thought pattern, the thought process that I'm in right before I like start to get like well before I start to get to that point. I don't have panic attacks very often anymore. That's kind of stopped since like sophomore year of college, I want to say, but it was a good chunk of my childhood, that's for sure. And like now I can like let myself think about, I still don't know what I want to do with my life, or right. What does that even mean? Basically that means like, what do I want to do to make money? Which is like, that's not what I want to do with my life. I'm just trying to figure out how do I determine some level of financial security. And if I find myself like really like hyper focusing on that, I am able to just like come to my partner, as long as like he has the mental headspace for it, to be like, yo, I'm panicking about this again, even though I know we've talked about like you've got my back and I've got yours. They're just in different capacities. I just need some reassurance right now, and I think like that's kind of where I'm at now, in terms of like navigating anxiety, specifically with that. Like that's definitely the most relevant
No, no,
way that
you're
it
actually
comes up
staying
in
totally
life
on
right
topic.
now.
So,
I'm
um,
tangenting again. I'm
what
sorry.
what I've found in the anxious people I know in my
Okay, okay,
life is
okay.
that there's always some degree of their anxiety, not always, there's often some degree of
Mhm.
anxiety in which they don't actually want to share with people. There's always this level that, it's like, okay, I'll talk about anxiety, but there's this part that I can't tell
Mm,
anybody because it's too much. My wife, for example, doesn't ever want to tell our friends about, her social anxiety
yeah.
because they're going to judge her. And I've talked to many people about it, and they're like, "Yeah, that's not weird. Like I feel that way
Mm,
often, but that's not their thing. That is their that it's too much. That's her thing. That's too much to, you know,
yeah.
it's the one thing that she thinks is gonna single her out. And nobody's gonna get it, but a lot of people do. Do you find that there's that thing for you that you're just like, no, I
Right.
don't want to tell anybody that.
Hmm. I would say just like I can really relate to like the social anxiety thing, especially if it's like
Mm.
a newer group of people or people that I don't feel like totally safe around yet, where like I haven't maybe had like that deep conversation with that person yet, or I haven't like found some kind of common ground. I can find myself like maybe not wanting to share as much about myself. And I think maybe, I don't know if this is true. This is like, I would have to ask someone I just met. But like my interpretation and like view of myself, maybe in like the first time I'm meeting someone, like I would venture to guess maybe I come off a little bit standoffish. I don't know if that's actually the case though. Like I have so many people tell me like, "Oh, but you're so bubbly." Like I don't think that's the case, and maybe it truly is just like a really deep internal thing. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm really
Well,
trying to
and
wrap my brain around this.
uh,
Like
to be
what do I
totally
not want to
transparent,
share?
because I feel like I'm asking you to go somewhere that is unfair if I'm not willing to go to the same place. For me, it's like my fear of abandonment and being alone is something that I wouldn't even
Mhm.
share with myself for a long time. It was it was something that like I was like my father and mother got divorced when I was
Yeah.
11, and my dad was always gone before that anyway. So like it's pretty deep seated. And whenever my wife and I would argue and divorce
Yeah.
would come up, like
Yeah.
my first thought was I don't even want to be here. Like it made me so anxious that it's like I did not want to be alive because it was, despite how beautiful my family is, how much I love living, as soon as that real threat to my partnership became like, realized, it was like, well, I'd rather quit.
Mhm.
Like that's how terrifying it was to me. And once I was able to, you know, unpack all my stuff and realize that that was my thing, I was able to, have deep conversations with my wife and share that with her eventually. To obviously nobody ever wants a relationship to end, you know for any reason, but I had to really express to the degree in which it
Yeah.
really scared me, and get a lot of reassurance from her a lot of different times. And that was something that was really hard for me to work through. So I just wanted to make sure that I was being equitable. And and if you don't want to go that deep, that's totally fine. It's my show, and I really want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
people to know that there is often a very dark place, and it's okay to have those fears. Just don't feel like you have to shoulder that burden alone. Hopefully you do have a person that you can share that with, because honestly, to
Yeah.
her it was like, well, duh, of course I don't want to leave you. I'm sorry that I ever said anything like that. Like, I love you, I want to be with you, like I want to do this life together, and I'm committed to doing that. And hearing that made that weight so much lighter. Sometimes it still feels heavy, but I can still, by putting words to that fear, it takes so much of
Yeah.
the weight out of it. It makes it, it removes so much of the pressure off my chest, and I'm able to move much lighter because I share it. So that's part of my authenticity story, is just taking that super deep thing, which I was so embarrassed about.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, like, what kind of baby threatens to hurt himself, if you leave? That's what it boiled down to. It was like, if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself. And it's like, that's not how it was manifesting in me, but that's kind of how it came out. And but looking at it from her angle is like, well, yeah, it's tough
Yeah.
doing it alone. We have a lot of responsibility. It would seem heavy, and yeah, I'm here for you. And instead of just struggling along with that for the rest of my life, I just shared it with her, and things got a lot better, a lot faster.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that helps me like
Yeah,
think a little bit more about
yeah,
like the question you were asking. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know, like how do I approach this? Like I'm again totally an open book. Like there are even some things like earlier in the conversation where like, we were on the topic of parenthood and there were things that I was like, I don't want to share that about myself right now, and I am just able to like, push past it. But when it comes to this, like I guess I would say my biggest fear is just like sharing my sadness. I think I think I'm trying to think of like the best way to phrase this. I keep repeating myself. I feel like I have this mindset of, well, if I'm just happy all the time, or if I'm just seemingly happy all the time, I guess the key word is seemingly, like no one else is going to feel as sad because I can be like a little dancing monkey or like whatever it may be. Um, and like, I remember feeling that like obligation or like weird responsibility from like a very young age. Not that like my mom pushed this on me like forcibly. It was just kind of like she was going through a divorce and had like two little kids that she was trying to take care of on her own and that kind of thing. And I think that that is something that has kind of always like stuck with me, like always just like always trying to be a ray of sunshine or trying to be like I don't know, like a distraction from like sadness. And like at this point now, like
yeah. No, it's
even
totally
with
fine.
like my pole dance journey, and is it okay if I talk about that? Okay. um like even with my pole dance journey and like the community I found within that, and like the different types of movement that there are, even past pole fitness of like perfection and form itself, I found like embodiment practices and like movement practices and that kind of thing. And I think that's like the biggest thing that has like allowed me to recognize that sadness is okay. It's not wrong to be sad. It's not wrong to feel it. It's not wrong to like want to let it out. I think I've like always really held that in until recently, even like within the last 2 years. And, being able to like dance that out in a very private, supportive, small group setting has like allowed me to like start peeling that out in like different parts of my life. So, yeah, I think like that's kind of the most recent like thing I've definitely been hiding when you mention anxiety, and like you mentioned yours with like fear of abandonment, that kind of thing. Like I think a lot of people can relate to that. Um
No, it's
I think that's what I have to share with it. I wish I had a more
no,
you're so
that's
much more
definitely, like,
eloquently
there is
spoken, and I'm
no
like, how do I phrase
invalid
this?
answer to that question. And I'm if it's not any deeper than that, then I'm happy for you, because it's not a great feeling to feel that way, to have uh that amount of like weight in your heart whenever that feeling comes. So if that is your story, that's good. And like, I don't want that for
Cool.
anybody else. I just know that sharing it helped me a lot. And so talking about pole dance, like it is definitely not a topic that's off the table because it's part of your
Yeah.
story. I was going to bring up body image
Okay.
and how pole dance has kind of balanced that for you, but it seems like pole dance has done
Mhm.
more than just help you with your own body image. Like, kind of talk to me about how you found pole dance. Uh, I know that that's something that like I have no relationship with. Like, I've heard that some people think, they have stereotypes about it and
Yeah.
think it's this way, and think it's all about like, attention seeking and sexualization, and the other side is that it's so much more than that, and that it's a very deep practice. It's similar to the yoga or whatever else. And so tell me what it is for you.
Yeah. Um, well, I'll say, first of all, I found it for myself in 2020. It was spring, summer of
Yeah,
2020.
I can.
So I'm sorry, can you hear that in the background or no? Shoot, okay.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry. Hold on, I think, what can I do to fix this? Maybe,
I don't hear him.
can you still
I don't know if he's talking.
hear that?
Oh, there he is.
Okay.
It's okay.
Shoot. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Bruce.
No, it's fine. Like
I'm
I
trying
can
to think of
clean
the
it up
best.
later. Don't
Oh,
worry
I
about
could
it.
go into the bathroom. Okay.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Sorry. I'm like, I don't want to get on a soft topic, but I don't want to ruin your audio. Sorry, everybody. Okay. So, I will start by saying that I found my pole dance journey in 2020, and it was like spring or summer, so like some things were starting to lift, but it was definitely like, wear the mask in the studio and that kind of stuff. Like it was definitely a weird time, such a strange time to find it, but what better time to like try a new hobby than then, because there was only so many things we could be doing. And I tried it out and fell in love with it, and it was just the pole fitness aspect of it. I hadn't even discovered like the S factor and body movement like side of what pole could be. And that didn't happen until 2 years later. So I was just trying it out in college, and like it was a really nice small pole studio. I actually happened to know the owner from childhood because I went to school, I went to undergrad in the same town that I grew up in. So it was just like, whoa, small world. Like this studio owner, like I knew her when I was a kid, and like that was super cool. But moving to, well, what year would this have been? Sorry, I'm like trying to do math in my head. Is everything still sounding
personally,
okay?
I would be like, "Hey, shut up!" But that's,
Are you sure?
I tell my family to be quiet whenever I'm recording because I'm, this is my thing. So it's you're a guest, and I don't want to make you feel like you have to.
No, totally. No, it's your thing.
Oh man.
He's just also working right now. Yes, sorry. This has been the really fun.
I feel that.
Navigation as a full-time traveler. So let's see what I'm gonna do. Actually, here, I'm gonna set this down.
No, it's okay. Do you have a balcony or a patio?
I feel so unprofessional. I apologize immensely. I have a patio. Let's try that.
Sorry to make you move around.
Okay. No, like, I would prefer this too if, like, it was roles reversed. We're in, like, such a small little, like, apartment setup that I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Good.
There's no one out here right now, so we should be good. Okay, I don't know.
I'll take intermittent like
here.
animal sounds over like low constant talking.
Yeah, another person. Fair. Fair. Okay, I'm just gonna hold the microphone. This is so funny. Your clips are gonna be awesome.
Thank you.
For
You sound
this.
great. Everything's good.
Okay,
Please
great.
relax. You didn't do anything wrong. I totally understand. It's totally fine. So like
Okay.
my face always looks like this. I have a resting bitch face. So
Okay, thank you. No, you're fine. I'm just like, oh my god, like that's distracting to me. It must be very distracting for him.
Sure,
okay.
yeah, that sounds
We're
good.
gonna hop back in. Do you want me to just start from the top so you can cut all of that out? Okay, cool. All right, yeah. So my pole journey started in 2020 at a studio that was like 10-15 minutes away from where I was living in my college town. Super cool. I fell in love with like the movement art form just for what it was, is like a physical challenge, just a totally different way to work out. I was like definitely starting to not enjoy your typical like gym routine. Like it felt forced. It felt like way too goal oriented. Not that pole fitness isn't goal oriented, because you want to try to make whatever type of pose and like try all these really complicated tricks and reach like it's just like a different like it's a different goal orientation, I guess. That doesn't feel so pinned down on the way you look, because I felt I was starting to fall into that mindset with the gym a lot, which it's not like everyone does. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are like, I just love the way it makes me feel. Like, I feel that way with yoga. I feel that way with pole. This is just my own personal journey. And so I fell in love with, like, just the pole fitness side of things at first. And then fast forward a year, 2 years down the line, I think I had, like, a 6-month break in between just because of affordability when I, like, briefly lived in Los Angeles. And it like all the studios surrounding were just way too expensive. I couldn't afford it. I was working like a barista job and trying to do like, what was it called? Like conservation work that was just not very funded, because nothing earth oriented really ever is. If you're going to try to go into the research realm. But, then I moved to Santa Cruz up north in California, and once I had made a little bit of money from the new job I found there, I was like, okay, like, I think it's definitely in the budget to be able to go to the studio. Like, I'm going to go back to it. And I joined, and it was just a blast. It was, like, such a welcoming community. I had heard about S Factor before, but had never been able to try it because the studio before that, the S Factor instructor that they had, S Factor is a form of embodiment movement. If you want to research it, I invite you to research it if you're interested. I'm just not a professional in like explaining it, so I'm not going to dive into that side too much, but it's basically free flowy movement that you can integrate with pole dance. And I had always wanted to try it and didn't get to until then. So I tried it out in Santa Cruz, and the studio owner was the main instructor for that class, and her and I just became like this, and we still are. I think I'm going to be talking to her like later on this week, and it was just like such an awesome like instant group of friends on a deeper level. Like, it wasn't your typical small talk stuff that you would encounter like at work, like we actually got to talk about really interesting stuff and find common ground with like body image stuff in general, because that's what we're looping it all into, with like, how pole dance and S Factor in particular has really helped us like find more love for ourselves in the different ways that we move and the different ways that we look and that kind of thing. And so it just, I don't know, it just kind of blossomed from there, and I really am missing it right now. It's so hard to like not be with all of them while I'm traveling, but it's cool we get to do this. But yeah, I don't know if that answered the question a little bit. I could dive a little bit more in if you wanted to know more, but I know you said it's not a world you're too familiar with. So is there anything that I could like?
So yeah, like what I wanted to, because I had a deeper question on it, is that we talked about
Yeah.
anxiety and how our brains lie to us, and like body image is another way that like my brain lies to me. Is it's in episode 14, I talked with my good friend Larissa about being big, like being in a big body. Like I'm pushing 350 pounds, and it is very easy to not line up with your body whenever you're bigger, because America's perception of big people is not a good one. So it's it would be easy for me to discount you being a smaller person and not having the best body image, but I definitely don't want to do that because it's not a choice as to whether what size you are depends on like if you feel good in your body or not. It's just either you do or you don't. And what was it about you that felt uncomfortable in your body? How did that manifest for you?
Yeah. It I do totally recognize like how different like each of our experiences is with that. I've had a person in the past like bring that up to me. Someone I was friends with at a younger time, a younger age, middle school, high school. This friendship isn't really prevailing as much anymore, but that has nothing to do with the body image stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. Me just setting boundaries for myself, and if they're not respected, then I have to make space from people. Anyways, that's totally different tangent. I would say like the beginning of my journey with all this body image stuff, and like again, the whole point of me like bringing up all that stuff with that past friend was just like recognizing like how different her and I's experiences were growing up, especially in the town that we did grow up in, but like you said, in the US in general. Was I was and I recognize that my mom, like, I love her so much. Like, this is not me trying to criticize her or anything like that. It's just like the different versions of like what we consider like body positivity and body neutrality just have changed so much since the early 2000s to now, and I'm hoping it still does continue to change. But the biggest thing I remember growing up was like I was very skinny as a child. I was very fit. I was very athletic. I could do all the sports. Like I loved that stuff. And my mom always praised my body, like kind of to a degree that I don't think I would say doesn't really occur for most people. And so I don't think I really had like an actual like conscious thought about like I never questioned that growing up. I was just kind of like, okay, mom, like that's weird or like whatever. And then like going into college and having much more of a focus on school and research and clubs and that kind of thing didn't leave as much room for activity, as well as, entering a deeper stage of puberty. And most women experience a metabolism that slows as they get a little bit older, and like having that drop off and then seeing my body change was kind of when that started to happen. And I was like, well, this isn't the same body that my mom praised when I was this age. And like that I think would say is kind of where and when I was thinking about the way I looked a lot more than I ever had before. So it's like a totally like, oh, I don't want to say flip-flopped. I can't think of the best way to like describe it, because like where I'm at now, and in the US, like I'm considered like mid-sized. Not big, I'm not small, mid-sized. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's just something that's nowhere I had been before. Like in my younger years. And so, in society still, like in the US particularly too, like smaller bodies are what are considered the ideal and the standard and like the best, or like whatever you want to call it for what it is. Like going into the pole dance community and like if you're going to be doing a pole trick and you're going to be going upside down, hanging on a leg, hanging on an arm, and that kind of thing, you're not wearing very much clothing. You're not going to stick if you don't. So there's a lot of like, it's a big exposure therapy thing, is like the best way I could describe it. And you know, we're already told in society to hide our bodies and that kind of thing. Like, you shouldn't be showing X, Y, or Z, and like I could dive into that totally other time with like the sexualization of women's bodies in particular, but bodies, and how it was just like total exposure therapy to like, okay, I'm like in a sports bra and underwear right now in front of others, or booty shorts or whatever, and it's like, it's for safety, like grippy pants, like.
Sorry, Kalyn, you just stopped recording. Kalyn, can you hear me? Kalyn, can you hear me still?
Am I back? Okay. It might be a little bit echoey. I am in my bathroom.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too bad.
Okay. I picked it.
Okay,
for
you look
my
like you were like you had a
headphones,
quick workout.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, we're back. Yeah, it's I'm like over here panicking, and inside I'm like, I'm the worst person ever. Oh my god, I'm ruining his podcast.
No, you're not. It's totally fine. You know, let's take a moment to talk about what you're feeling right now. Like, let's be authentic. And you know, to the audience, like, we've been having some technical difficulties. We're doing this in a remote situation, and stuff happens, and all the stuff has been happening right now. So Kalyn is dealing with some anxiety. Like, tell us what you're going through right now.
Yeah, I just overall, like, I wanted to say the like thoughts that are bouncing around my head are like, oh, this is unprofessional, this is rude, I'm wasting his time, like, I am becoming a problem that I never thought I would become, and like that kind of thing. Like, just fear of like being a terrible guest. Like, you were such a wonderful guest on my podcast, and I'm like, I know I can do this. Like, this shouldn't be a problem. And like, of course, of all days, it's like boyfriend's talking really loud, but he's on a meeting, and like I can't tell him to shut up.
So let's talk about the reality of it. Like, the reality of it is, you're doing me a favor by coming on my podcast. I appreciate you as a guest. So, you know, you're helping grow my audience by like us working together. So that is like, I'm thankful for you. Being,
it goes both ways, man.
Well, thank you so much. It is a collaborative thing, and when you collaborate with other people, you have to accept that there's going to be stuff out of your control. Like, it is absolutely out of my control. If you would have showed up, you know, with crap all over your face and totally unprepared to do a podcast, you're like still half drunk from the night before or whatever, that would have been totally out of my control. Like, I trusted that you were somebody who wanted to come on my podcast and would show up ready to be on it, and you've done that, and you've been open, and you've shared your life, and that's really, for me, the only thing it takes to be a successful guest on my show is come on, be honest, be vulnerable when you feel comfortable doing so, and help us, see your story and how authenticity has played into it. And even in this moment, like, that's something that, you could be like, no, let's not talk about, let's just move on. And I think it's important to be in this moment for a second and appreciate that stuff happens. And whenever stuff happens, it's important to allow yourself grace. Nothing that's happened has been your fault. It's been completely out of your control. It has been internet, it's been hardware, it's been your boyfriend. It's all things that, like, there's nothing you could have done to prepare for that. You came on as a prepared guest. You did what you were supposed to do, and stuff still happens. So, like, breathe it in and then breathe it out. Like, let it go. Right?
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. You're bringing me back down to earth here. I'm like,
good.
It's so true. It's all out of our control. We're not professionals yet.
Right. I mean, you are now. You've got 20 podcasts down, so you're in the top 1%. So.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm still over here like, wow, people are like bulk recording their episodes. I'm like, it's the end of Monday and I have two people who said yes to podcasting with me, but they still haven't like scheduled anything on my Calendly. You inspired me to make a Calendly, by the
Oh,
way.
are you serious? Like not the
Yes,
Calendly part,
yeah.
like because I was late to the game. Another podcaster I know was like, "Hey, like, do you have a Calendly link?" And I was like, "No, not yet. Let me send it to you in a minute." And like I went and set one up because it does make things a lot
Yeah.
easier scheduling wise. But for me, the idea of not having a podcast guest for the week that is supposed to be released, I'm recording for today is episode 17. I released episode 10 today. Or it's 9 or 10. So
Wow,
yeah,
dude, that's awesome.
thank you very much. But also like I'm ADHD, and whenever I'm on something, I'm on it. Like I want to, like, and I'm super about this life. So I know we've got a move coming up. So there's a lot of things that I don't want to lose progress and
Yeah,
momentum because we're
yeah,
moving. I don't know if I'm going to find people immediately whenever we get to where we're going that are going to want to come on my show. Like, luckily I've been able to find a pretty good remote, you know, uh, pool of guests, but like I've got scheduled episodes that'll pretty much cover me through November. By the end of next week, I'll have recorded.
that's amazing.
I'm
That's like pat on the back,
oh,
dude.
thank
I'm
you.
over here like, I don't know how you do this. Like the outreach is impressive. Like it sounds like, are you like getting out into your community and doing that, or are you like just like cold messaging
No,
people day in and day out? Like I want to know your secret because I'm like, well, hopefully I have someone on this week. If not, I guess Zach's gonna come on. That's my partner. He's gonna come on and we're gonna bullshit around about something because I cannot not have an episode come
right.
out.
So that, I mean, that's my first step was my wife. Like that was the first one I went with because not it wasn't
Yeah.
just because she was convenient. That definitely helped. But I wanted
No,
to, like,
totally.
starting with authenticity, I knew that me and my wife both struggled with, at times imposter syndrome. I knew that that was something that I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about. So I was like, why not start this whole thing with my partner and everything else? Like I know I'm comfortable. I know I'll be able to like show my best self with my partner there. So that's how I started. But
Yeah.
as far as reaching out to other people, a lot of it has been people I met from my past job. Like networking was part of my job. So
Okay.
like the people I networked with, like I've kept those contacts and I've stayed in touch with them. And like so a couple of them have been my mentors. Um, Other people I worked with at school, like been nobody off the table for me that I thought would be a good guest for the show. It's like if we've met and I thought you'd
Yeah.
be a good guest, like I'm gonna reach out to you. If we haven't met and I've seen you in like the
I like
Riverside group and I'm just like, hey, would you be interested? Like the worst thing they can say is no. Like I've had somebody
yeah.
who they just started the whole podcasting thing. And I was like, hey, would you like to collaborate, do an episode? And they're like, oh, sounds so awesome. I listened to her podcast and it was, it was cool. Like wasn't exactly for me, but I thought she would have been a good guest. And she reached back out and was like, yeah, actually, after talking to my partner, I've decided to solely focus on, building relationships that have to do with my field. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, that it hurt initially. I was like, damn, because
Yeah.
my audience is everybody. Like often, I mean, like
Mhm.
I've got a target audience, but really everybody has to deal with making the choice every day to either be authentic or not. That's something everybody deals with.
Yeah.
So my niche doesn't necessarily fit into other people's niche, but it's like everybody fits into mine. So there's going to be people who are going to say like, yeah, we don't really align. And I'm like, are you not authentic in your business? Like, are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
I'm
You
not.
know this
Go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, that you're getting me thinking about like some of the stuff I've been trying out like in terms of like alternative like profession or job or like whatever money making thing, and like the most recent thing I've been doing is like trying out copywriting and excuse me. I initially got stoked about it because I'm like, oh, like there's so many like businesses that I know I believe in that I could like do this with. But like the key thing there is like it's the businesses that I believe in.
Mhm.
And so loop back to now where I'm like actually practicing the work and just trying to write, because writer's block is such a unfortunate thing, just like artist's block
Yeah.
or podcaster's block, maybe.
Oh God, is that
And
a thing?
I found myself, what was that?
So God, is that a thing? Podcaster's block? I don't want to experience that. That's terrifying.
I feel like I have all these really great ideas when I'm like walking around, and then I get home, and when I have my scheduled write down time, I'm like, what am I doing?
Right. I know that feeling.
But yeah, like I've been noticing the most writer's block I've been getting is when I'm not stoked about the person or business I'm writing for.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I feel that is because I have initial gut reaction of being like, I don't think this person is as legit as they say they are. Like the vibes I'm getting from this make me feel icky, and I feel icky doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, and I hate to like be judgmental. I feel like it comes off as judgmental at first, but then I'm like, well, there's got to be a reason that there's something inside telling me that this is icky, and I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm. I definitely, I haven't had anybody I felt icky about, but I've been trying to prepare myself for this situation, because at some point somebody's going to come into my show about authenticity and is going to just bald face lie. They're just going to be like a total liar, and they're going to not be honest with their story. They're not, and they're going to, so they're, trying to take advantage of my audience. And I feel a way about that.
Yeah.
I don't have like this huge following or whatever, but if I did, I'd still feel the same way. I care about the people who are taking the time to listen to my show. Like, I care about people anyways, and I don't want them to get taken advantage of by somebody who's unwilling to be honest. Like, if you want to come on my show and tell people like your darkest stuff and really be like, gritty and nasty, and like, I'd rather that than somebody come on and like pretend to be okay. Like, that's unfair to people who are showing up and are not okay. Like, there was I did an intro for an episode that hasn't come out, and I was like, as I'm writing this, like, I just had an argument with my wife, and I've got to clear that off my chest before I'm able to finish writing for this episode, because I don't want to be lying to my audience. I don't want to pretend like I'm okay when I'm not. And it made me feel okay for one, but also like, I don't know. I just make that idea makes me feel really angry. Like, don't do that. Don't come on my show and don't like, but I know it's going to happen. And I just don't know if like, whenever that happens, if I try to like poke holes in their story, whenever I figure out they're not being authentic, or if I just like end it and I'm like, you know what, this is not going to work out. Or if I record it and then don't air it, like, I'm still like, I'm trying to figure that out. Or if I just record it and like, this person's a liar, don't listen to any of this.
It's interesting, like, we haven't seen any of that in the particular recording platform Facebook group that we met each other in, because I would be interested in how many other people maybe have navigated that or have the same fear, because that has definitely come up in my head before. Like,
right.
You don't know someone, and as you reach out to more and more people, like, who knows who you're going to encounter? Like, you could even argue that for like you and I, like, we've only ever met face to face 2 times now, and like, we message on Messenger, like trying to like plan our stuff, but it's like, we only owe each other as much trust as like how much we've interacted, and that's been twice. So it's like, you could even argue that with our interactions. Like, it's a scary thought, like, having people pretending that they're being okay, that they're having people pretend that they're okay and that kind of thing. Like, that's so incredibly common just in day-to-day life, that like, how would you even filter that out? It's such a terrible thought, but I feel like you could totally like recognize it for what it is. But in terms of approaching that from like a professional standpoint and how you go forward, I have no clue.
I mean, what I've tried to do so far is like bare my soul to a degree with my introduction. Like, generally with people, I'm like, hey, this, like, I see this in you, I see you, and I want you to see me in like whatever way. And like, really try to create a space where it's like, this is me being honest. Like, this is what my honesty looks like. Hopefully you're going to match that energy.
Yeah.
And so far it's been really, really successful. People have been like, one of my good friends and mentors, Peter, what came on the show, and he he really rocked my world because he's somebody who I think of as a really like great networking person, somebody who's like, he's not like trying hard, but he's like kind of always on because like everybody loves to talk to him. He's always like, people gather around him in a room. And whenever we talked, he was like, oh, yeah, that's not me. Like, I don't like, I do that, but that's what I do. It's not who I am. And he's like, for a
Mm,
long time, like I was dealing with so much and I was putting myself out there to do that. And I was dying. And he like, dude, he laid it out for me in a way that I would like, it floored me. And that was whenever I really recognized the power that my show could have. And the power and me, as the host of that is that by putting myself out there, other people will put themselves out there too. And that's
yeah.
going to help people. Like I know it's going to help people, and that's really exciting for me. And now I'm on a tangent, so like, I need to rein myself back
No, let's go on tangents together. I feel like I can relate to that though. Like I know we opened up to one another. I think this might have just been while we were messaging, but just like how beautiful and how much more fulfilling it is to like just dive into the nasty deep like dark depths of who we are
in.
is like so much more fulfilling to like share that interaction with someone than to just be like, how's it going?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, I hate that question. I hate that question.
I hate asking it. Well, not that's not true. Some people I know they're going to give me a real answer, and so it's like
Right,
those people
right.
I like asking. Like my friend Courtney is like, "Hey, how's it going?" And she'll, some days it's going to be like, "Oh man, today has been great." Like, so many amazing because he appreciates life um to a really impressive degree. But sometimes she will like lay it on me and been like, "Today has been so much." And I love that about her. I
Yeah.
love knowing that it's like we're gonna skip through all of the BS and we're gonna get right into it whenever we talk. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
So let's like
Yeah.
I'm gonna hop back on
Oh,
my questions because
yes, of course. Sorry.
there's still stuff I want to know about you that I think that my audience will appreciate.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so you said your anxiety isn't really social, but if you were in a brand new place every 10 days to 2 months, you're starting over. Like so that like the safety and security that you build up in kind of your home wherever that may be for the current place, like that goes out the window. And does that start that mindset again where you start asking yourself questions and start doubting yourself whenever you're trying to build that community, or is this again where you tap into that like that doesn't fit me mindset and I'm just going to go do my thing?
Yeah. Honestly, the first 6 weeks, which 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, that's what the first 6 weeks were. I had like that anxious feeling of like maybe this isn't right, like maybe this isn't what we should be doing, or maybe what I should be doing. I don't want to say we, like I can't speak for what my partner was feeling, but I definitely doubted it a bit more when our location was changing so frequently because it was so exhausting. It was like a, a different group and type of group of people each time that it was just like so overwhelming to like take in all that stimulus and like recognize like, okay, this person's like fun to talk to, like I can talk to them while I'm making my dinner in the hostel kitchen, or oh, that person said something that like really rubbed me the wrong way about how they felt about the Barbie movie. Like I'm just speaking
Mhm.
from something funny that happened at a co-work place we stayed at. And yeah, anyways, like it was just like overwhelming to have that be the case. And now we're staying in the same town for 2.5 months. I think we're a month in now to being here, and it just feels worlds different. It's so nice. Like, we are able to immerse ourselves. Like, we went on this really awesome chocolate tour yesterday of like start to finish. Here's how cacao's harvested, here's the um, history of it with like colonization and the different ways that like different like old cultures have like used it and that kind of thing, all the way up until we made the chocolate ourselves. Like getting to do that kind of stuff in a community and like learn about this really cool farm and like the locals that they interact with and like trade stuff with and that kind of thing. Like we weren't getting that when we were changing every 2 weeks. And I think like, not everyone can do this because of, whatever it is you're trying to do in your working world. And so I just feel like it's like such a disservice for other people who do get to travel for like their 10 days a year. And like this was me, like I had that time and like that was it. And it's like you're really just much more in that vacation mindset. And like now we're getting to just like really, get the scoop on like, oh, here are these really good local places to eat and like that kind of thing. I'm becoming really good friends with a yoga teacher that I've been like going to classes with like since we've been here, and making friends with other people at the hostels, like the people that work at the hostels. Like there's this one girl and her and I just get excited to see each other every time. And like, every time we see each other, my Spanish is like just a little bit better and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's just like, it's worlds different now where I feel like I'm not, like the doubt will inevitably like come up every now and then when I'm like trying to figure out how I want to make money and like that kind of thing. But other than that, like it's been really cool to dive in with people a lot more here and dive in with like the great nature spots and that kind of thing. I am definitely feeling a lot like I'm not attaching to like whatever stuff may arise. It kind of just, it comes up and I'm like, that's not mine. Like, get out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you told me that you took like a 6-month break from alcohol, and you still are currently like considerably reduced, like once a month in your alcohol intake. How has that transformed what this travel life has been for you? Has it made a huge difference?
Yeah. Well, I'll say the 6-month thing started around, I think it was like August 2022. And so I did that until, or maybe it was a little bit before that. I can't remember exactly. It was like summer 2022 and then like 6 months down the line. And then after that, I was like, okay, like I'll have a drink every now and then. And now that we're traveling, it's been interesting, like going to each place and seeing the different way that the communities are like centered or surrounded or like focused around like whatever particular thing, whether that's surfing or the beach or partying at the beach or like, that like whatever it may be, wherever like most people gravitate towards, like on a particular like day, evening, whatever. And yeah, now like it's so funny. Today's Monday, right? Yeah. So it's
Yes.
This episode's probably coming out a while from now, right?
Yeah, it'll be a while.
Yeah, because you're really good at like bulk recording your episodes.
Yes.
So, okay. For the listener's perspective, it is a Monday while Bruce and I are speaking with one another. And 2 nights ago, Saturday night, my partner and I were like, what should we do? Like, what do we want to go do tonight? Like, there's not much to do except go to a bar or like go to a restaurant or like go to a club or a beach club or whatever. And we're like a 24 and a 26-year-old like questioning that. And I feel like, most people in our age group, like that's kind of not the norm. So we kind of just laugh and I'm like, gosh, we sound like old people. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we definitely don't, like, it would be easy to, like, boil it down to just, wow, we sound like old people, but it really is so much more than that. Like, that's just the joke that we have. Like, there's, like, definitely layers of, like, what alcohol has been in each of our families and, drugs tying into that as well and that kind of thing, to where, like, we're out of our college phases and, like, college timelines and that kind of thing, where like partying every weekend isn't really something that feels like super fulfilling personally for us. Like I'm this is not propaganda to like tell someone if you're drinking alcohol you're bad. I'm
Kalyn, you don't have to apologize for your opinions. You can just
Okay.
you can say this is how I feel, and I'm
Okay.
here for you to be yourself. You don't have to apologize about it.
Thank you. I just don't want people to
You're
feel like I'm
welcome.
judging them because it's like it's so much
Nobody
more than
thinks you're
just like
judging them.
okay, okay,
The only
okay.
person judging is you were judging yourself. Like, stop it.
No, you're so right. You're so right.
Just yeah, just tell me, like, so you're thinking all these people are judging you because you're not participating in the lifestyle that's normal for your
Yeah.
age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been interesting. It's been good, right? You've been able to appreciate the places where you're traveling a lot more than I would have at your age, for sure. I would have been drunk most of the time, and that would have, looking back on it, that would have been super depressing to have traveled somewhere like Costa Rica and not have a great memory of it because I was just wasted.
Yeah. 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 I feel like my biggest preface with it was just like, I'm not like 100% sober anymore. I tried that out for 6 months and then I was
Hmm.
like, okay, like I feel like my view on it is a little different now and I'm fine having like a drink occasionally and that sort of deal. So it's like, like that's where I'm at currently. I just don't want anyone to like hear this and be like, well, dang, like I'm doing this all wrong because that's obviously not the case. Like alcohol's been
Right.
around longer than humans have been around. Like it
Hmm.
it happens on the fruit that falls on the ground, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When fruit
So,
falls on the
so
ground. But
what
yeah.
was it that was happening in your life that made you decide to take a a little alcohol sabbatical?
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. So the thought process and just like the idea of it came up a few months before I even like actually like really stuck with it. Like leading up to that, it was like a soberish sandwich, sober, soberish again, and then like before the soberish phase, like I'm moving the microphone around. Sorry about that. Um,
That's okay.
the like it was like first soberish phase, sober, soberish again, and that's currently where I'm at.
Mhm. Yeah.
Before the first soberish situation, I guess I was experiencing maybe a little bit of like some social pressure and like um yeah, I guess we'll just call it for what it is, like some social pressure of like, okay, I'm at a new job, I'm in a new town, like I want to get to know my coworkers, like let's try to make some friends. And so I would go out with them and party pretty much every weekend, and I think that was honestly the most I've partied like even before college. Like I was a grandma even in college. Like I went to the occasional frat party and like did your occasional danger and that kind of thing, but it was definitely not an every weekend situation. This
Hmm.
particular time, moving to my new town, it was every weekend for like a month or two, and I just remember feeling exhausted afterwards and like sad because with those high highs you get those low lows. It's like that typical thing they talk about with any kind of like alcohol education or like substance abuse education and that sort of deal. And I just hated how it was like affecting me going into work. Like I wasn't doing it on work nights or anything, but it just made me feel like I didn't actually have a weekend because of how tired I was, if that makes sense, because I was just drunk the whole time or high the whole
Okay.
time or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And
Hmm.
so I kind of just toyed around with the idea for a little bit and then I just like went for it. I was like, like why don't I just like try this out and see how, like how different how I spend my weekend time differently, and B, what kind of people am I still hanging
Hmm.
around after that fact? And I think that was like the big thing for me was what people are still going to be around afterwards. And that was the big thing that like started to make stuff a little more clear to me with like what kind of relationships I actually want to have in my life. Not even romantic. Like I know what kind of romantic relationships I want to have in my life, but like friendships and the types of interactions I want to have with
Yeah.
people. And I think that's kind of what the biggest deal was. And then I think I like kind of lightly touched on like some of the familial stuff, like definitely for my partner and I. Um, that like vulnerable share here, like I don't want to dive too much into it because it's like it's so hard. Like I know I'm not the most eloquently spoken person, so it's hard for me to like want to give all the details, but also not like out someone
Hmm.
who I'm still close with in my life. So like, there's other stuff in the mix. I guess like the most like vague thing I can mention is like recognizing how different a loved one in my life talks to me and interacts with me when they've had, say, an entire bottle of wine versus not. And like
Right.
that's like a big thing that I recognized and just didn't like. And I remember calling it out and it started this huge
Yeah.
fight. And, like that uncomfortability still lingers a little bit, but it's like, it's a scary thing to like bring up to someone when like substance abuse is in the mix. And
Yeah. So, I
yeah.
mean, for one, let me tell you, like, I appreciate greatly for you telling your story, but I also understand that there are parts of your story that belong to other people. So, in not sharing exactly who, is dealing with
Yeah.
whatever substance, however they're dealing with it, I totally respect that. And I appreciate that there is a degree of, telling your story that you can do without, like you said, outing somebody else's, or telling somebody else's story for them in a way that they probably wouldn't tell it. So that's, I appreciate that. And for two, like, um it
Right.
is almost like socially unacceptable at this day and age to be sober just because, like, if you're not like a recovering alcoholic, people are like, what, you don't
Yeah.
drink? And that's, I enjoy, drinking on the
Yeah.
weekends. Sometimes I'll have a drink at night, like whatever. But I went through a phase where I didn't drink for a long period of time to get there. I had to
Yeah.
like completely change my relationship with alcohol. Like I never drink to get drunk anymore. Like I haven't been drunk in so long.
Exactly.
That's the difference. Is whenever I first started drinking at
Hmm.
whenever I got to college, I'd never had a drink before I got to college. And I got to college and immediately got drunk and pretty much stayed drunk for, you know, 6 months, and then only ever drank to get like wasted. And the idea of alcoholism was introduced to me, and I was like,
Right.
I don't think that's it for me. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. Like, I was very, we probably had that same fight that you and your loved one had where I was like, I'm not an alcoholic. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. What was different for me is that I maintain that to this day
Yeah.
because I can have a drink now and not try to chase down the whole bottle or try to, you know, get that feeling back that, that you get
Right.
whenever you're, you know, blackout drunk. I didn't know how to make good decisions. Like that was my big thing is I came into college having had my whole life run for me, and I didn't know how to make decisions for myself. So whenever it came to that, I made like let other strong personalities in my life make decisions, and strong personalities in college are often bad ones. If you're hanging out, or in the group I was hanging out with, I had other strong personalities who
Yeah.
tried to take me under and like say, hey, why don't you come to this thing that is not a drinking thing? It's like a service community, like a community service type thing. And I tried that, and I was like, this isn't as fun. So I went with the other person who was like, drink, drink, try drugs, do this, do that, and I was like, okay, okay, okay. And whenever I started to take responsibility for my own life and learn to make my own decisions, I had to back away from everything and look again at what my why was moving forward. And that still didn't work for a long time until I had a kid. And then my why became very clear and obvious. And it was that lined me out after a while. Like it wasn't right out. There was still 2 or 3 years where I was not doing good.
Yeah, it's wild how, and I want to say particular in the US, but I would venture to say you can see this in most places. I don't know if that's fully true. I haven't been to Europe yet, but I mean,
Mm.
I don't know. maybe just like an age group thing, but like the way the way it's like sold to us and that kind of thing is like excess, excess, excess. Like you've got to be having a good time. A good time means you don't remember what happened the night before, and oh, like it's this glorious like party filled life and like that kind of thing. And it's like such an inaccurate representation of like what actually is fun, in my opinion, personally. Like, and this is not like I am not holier than thou. Like I let's see, what month are we in right now? It's September.
Yes, it is September when we're
I
recording this.
had yeah, September when we're recording. Not September when this comes out. Yeah, I had like one of my really good friends threw a surprise going away birthday party mixture thing for me right before we left. And that was the first time I had gotten like I wasn't like blackout drunk or anything, but I had gotten like considerably like tipsy for the first time in like a year, in all honesty. And with that being said, like I say all of this, but like I'm by no means perfect, and like that hasn't come up since then. It was definitely like let's enjoy it because we're all together kind of thing. But again, it had to be facilitated by alcohol, and like that's kind of like what I want to still question. Like I want to challenge that just with society in general, not with the people that were there. Like I had a blast. It was great to get to hang out with them and have like one last little party together and that sort of deal. But like, why is that? Why was it that way as opposed to some other way and like that kind of thing? You know what I mean? And like that's no like criticism on like the way she put that party together. Like I had a great time and I was very grateful for her to put that together. It's just me questioning, society as a whole.
And here is this is my criticism. I'm going to criticize. I will say that if you need to drink to enjoy your friends, there is either something wrong with your friends, something wrong with your life, or something wrong with you. And saying that doesn't mean that they're bad friends. That means that maybe they're not the right friends for you. Like I did not realize for the longest time that I hadn't been the right friend for a lot. Like I hadn't carried a group of friends over in any period of my life until I started living in Oklahoma City 10 years ago or so. I have no friends from before that really. And that's because I had always spent my life trying to be what I thought they wanted. And they didn't, nobody wants that. Nobody wants a person who's trying to make you like them, right? Then if they do want it, it's to use you some way. So that's not who you should be looking for.
Yeah.
But getting through that, I realized that I also didn't like those people. Like I was like trying so hard to get these people to like me. And what I found was that they weren't even like the right people for me. The people who I enjoy being around, I don't have to I don't have to be drunk to enjoy a conversation with them. No way, shape, or form. We have great, deep conversations, whether we're drinking or not, because we're those types of people. Like I'm ADHD, and I know that my capacity for small talk is super low. Like I'm not here for it, and it's not that I won't try to if there's somebody I care about and I want to foster that relationship, I will try to be interested in something that I'm not interested in. Like I'll try to mire through it. But in the end game, the people I want to be around are people who want to talk about real stuff real quick. And that's who I surround myself with now. And maybe just look at how you're interacting with your people. Are you being honest with them? Because if you are, things change very quickly. People will fade out who don't belong, and you'll start to attract people who look for that, who enjoy people who are really being themselves. That's the whole platform of my coaching, is that if you're being fake, you're never going to find what you're looking for, because who is looking for the real you can't find you. Like you're hiding the real you. And that's in career, that's in friendships, that's in relationships. Like you can't find those people who connect with the real you because you're hiding. And so that's my thing about like needing to be drunk to hang out with people. Like you don't need it. Like you can and I'm not knocking drinking, because it is nice to not have to be stressed about the overall shape of life,
Right.
taking the edge off is a nice thing to be able to do. But if
No,
you need it
totally.
all the time, there's something wrong. Something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's something that's so much deeper, and I like you can't just like outright and go say that to people that
Oh, I will.
you were maybe having those experiences with either, you know?
Yeah.
Like I at least personally, like I don't know, I just feel like there's so much more to it that's like, you know, the way that you like the way that we're told like, well, here's how you would approach talking to an addict, or here's how you would
Mm.
approach talking to someone who's in an abusive relationship. Like you can't just outright call it out. It scares them away. You're not going to
Yeah.
be able to help them and that kind of thing. Like it just it dives so much deeper into like human
Mm.
psychology and all that kind of stuff. And I'm no professional in that realm, but like in terms of like personal life experience with any kind of substance addiction, that kind of thing, like in my family and friends and that kind of thing, like it truly isn't just like a like boom boom boom, here's what's all wrong. Like there's it's so nuanced like how
Yeah,
you're gonna
there's
approach it, so
definitely
it's
a
hard
lot
to
of
like
nuance whenever it comes to especially
yeah.
the addiction part, and
Hmm.
that's a time whenever I will put on my kid gloves, and I will. But whenever it comes to just the BS part, where it's just like,
Oh yeah.
you're not being honest, that's whenever I call it out as soon as I recognize. I'm like, hey, this is like,
Yeah.
please stop that. Like, if you don't want to hang out with me, you don't want to talk to me, fine, but please don't come in my space with with BS energy. Like, I just don't want it. So
Yeah.
come back, try
Yeah.
again,
Get it out of
or
here.
don't. Yeah, it's like, and that's fine. And that's been a big transformation for me over the last 5 years. That's not who I always was. Like I said, I was always trying to get people to like
Yeah.
me. I was always putting up with stuff that I wasn't really comfortable with. And I don't like that doesn't even sound like me. People who knew me well, my wife would be like, "What? Like you put up with what? Like why do you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Like I just want to get along. I just want people to like me." And now everybody who I
Yeah.
still currently hang out with knows that that's not how I roll. Like now, will I occasionally put my foot in my mouth? Yes, but the people who know me love me anyway. Then that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it, is that, yeah, you're going to make mistakes in life. And if you've been yourself, the people who know who you really are going to accept that about you. And they're going to say, yep, you did it again. And they're going to be real with you and tell you that you messed up. And you're going to apologize because you love those people and you don't want to hurt them. And then you're going to move on. That's me tangenting again.
Oh, not a tangent. I'm here to listen. I could listen to you talk forever. You're seriously very captivating to listen to.
Oh.
I'm like, yes, like spew the facts, give me the life advice. Like you're
Well,
me 20 years later, or
oh
however
man,
many years later. Like,
thank you. I think I feel kind of old, but also I do appreciate you saying that. You know, I feel pretty confident in the things I say about life, but I'm
yeah,
also okay with being shaped by others to a degree. Like
yeah,
I've got my fundamental self that I'm very confident in, but I also don't want to have such hard edges that I can't be shaped by somebody else's opinion. Like that's the
yeah,
difference. Like I used to
yeah.
take on everybody's opinion and try to wear it and make it who I was. And what I've learned is
Hmm.
that being shaped by other people's opinions is not disingenuous. It's when you try
Yeah,
to be what you think they want, that was where you start being fake. I want people to like say, "Hey, man, it seems like you're really blah blah blah," and I want to take that in and like see how it feels, see how it tastes, and be like, "Yeah, okay, I can see what you're saying, and here's what I feel about that, and here's how I'm going to change or not." Like,
yeah,
because I want to keep growing, I want to keep getting better. I want people who like me to love me. I want people who love me to love me more, because that's what social people are. We're social creatures, so I want to keep growing, and in order to grow, instead of like actually change. Like changing and growing, I feel like is where the difference kind of cuts off. Like I don't want to change, I want to grow. Like I want to be
yeah,
me, but a bigger, better version of me. And that's
yeah,
before I was like, I'll change and be whatever you want. And you can only change so many times before you have no idea who you are. And that's where I
yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's
So
scary. It's so easy to like get caught up in it too. Sorry, what were you gonna
yeah, no,
say?
no, no, please, if you've got more to add to that, please, that's I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Nah, no, no, no. I was just saying,
Yes,
like,
please.
yeah.
You said it's scary. Go with it.
No, well, just like it's scary how like how I don't know, the like big thing that's like popping up in my head right now is just like what has been targeted, say, on like my TikTok recently, because we all know how that algorithm shit works. Like
Mm.
it pinpoints you, it finds you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I see so much like, here's the summer for you to glow up, and here's how you have the next glow up, and glow up, glow up, glow up, glow up, glow up. And I'm like, shut up. Like, why am I seeing this? Why are
Yeah.
you telling me that, like, here's the new thing I need to do to be freaking changing myself? Like, girl, be. Here's a time where I'm going to use the F word, but it just feels so incredibly relevant.
Okay, do it.
Be so fucking for real.
Yeah.
Are you really going to tell me that in order to make myself better, I have to wake up at 5 a.m., make a whole elaborate breakfast? It's actually not that elaborate. It's actually just like diet culture being like subliminally like projected towards me.
Mm-hmm.
And then go on a 5-mile run living off of a fucking banana.
Yeah.
Like, you see that kind of stuff, and there's like obviously so many different versions of that, and I'm like, what is the point here? It's like, it's gotten to the point where I'm like, report this video, not interested, not interested, not interested. Yeah. Stop showing me this crap. And so if I could give any takeaway to anyone, because I would venture to say most of us are consuming some type of media, like, unfollow the shit that you notice is making you feel like crap. That has been like the biggest change for me in terms of like media, like intake and like consumption. Consumption is like, if you don't feel good about it, and like maybe that is that, you know, you're just comparing yourself to something, let's move that out of the way, recognize like that's more of an internal thing and like not that person's particular deal, and maybe you can visit that when you're in a better mental space. So yeah, that's what I was getting at. That just like, that stupid glow up thing is so annoying.
That's very good. Like, I know that my, like, for a time I followed a lot of like fitness guys because I was working out all the time, and I was looking for new workouts, and then like I've stopped working out as much, and that stuff stopped being as much fitness like ideas, and it started becoming like, something that made me feel bad. It was like, well, I'm not working out as much. Like, I should work out more, but I don't need, like, I know that I don't need to follow this person and have them like reminding me that I don't look like that. So this isn't right for my life anymore. So I unfollowed them, and my feed is mostly just about stuff that I think is funny, that makes me happy, and like that's what my social media, especially Instagram. Like, I'm not on TikTok because I know that the algorithm is too good, and it will pull me down holes that I won't be able to get back out of for hours, and I'm too ADHD for that. So like I'm happy with my Instagram Reels, which is still pretty good, and like it makes me laugh, puts me in a better mood. I share stuff with my wife and a couple of my friends, say some videos that are appropriate to watch with my kids, and I leave it at that. I don't need anybody else to show me what my life could be like, because I've got my life, and I want to appreciate what my life is. And when you're comparing, you can't appreciate your life for what it is. There's always something that's different, better, more, less, like, even the less than you compare to as well. And that's also not good. It should just be about your life and how living it is great.
It's so much more. I'm like, how has that continued to prevail? Like, I guess maybe it's some kind of human psychology thing, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not a professional in that realm, but how is that what has prevailed in social media all this time when everything first came out? Like, that's what you continue to see. Like, as much as I want to say, like, the more like positive, influential people are out there, like, all that other stuff is still prevailing, and I'm like, how do we get rid of this? It's not helping anyone. Like,
get teenagers off of social media, because that's where it's coming from. It's there are a lot of adults who also compare themselves, but they're not the ones who are like loving the stuff that makes them feel bad. It's the impressionable youth. Like, I am very much not the person who thinks that 13-year-olds should be on Instagram. Like, I don't think that it's shown that it is like specifically causing more suicides, especially in young girls. And that breaks my heart, because it's a pretty simple fix. Don't give it. I do social media with my daughter, like, like my oldest who's 13, like sometimes when everybody else has gone to sleep, I'm like, hey, do you want to social media a little bit? And we'll scroll together and we'll watch funny
Yeah.
videos and we'll laugh about stuff and there's some stuff I'll skip past because I can tell it's gonna be like that. It's like, this is some body image thing that she doesn't need. And like I act as a filter that way because I don't think that it's totally fair to be like no social media for you ever. And then, like I said, I save videos for all my other kids that are like, cute puppies and kittens and, funny like songs or whatever stuff that's like pretty wholesome because I think that there is a lot of good on social media. Like it's
Totally.
basically like World's Funniest Home Videos was for me when I was a kid. Like
Yeah.
it's like it was really funny to see other people's lives and how funny stuff happened in it. And like social media can be that. So that's what I do. I want to share that with them. I don't want them to not get any of the benefits of it, but I control it because I don't want them to get all of the negative stuff that is involved in that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's cool. Looping all the way back to the parenthood stuff, I am constantly like, wow, how are we going to navigate, like, you know, this might be an extreme, but like posting photos of your kids on the internet and like some of the messed up stuff that's out there with like explicit sites and that kind of thing when you think about like deep fakes and like those
yeah.
possibilities, as well as like when will they be allowed to have a cell phone? Because we're now in a day and age where like being able to use that basic stuff is really important for school and that kind of thing. And I'm like, how do
Yeah.
you even navigate that
I mean,
now?
and that's
Like,
one of
that's
that's
so scary.
it's going to be really hard by the time you have kids because it is going to be so integrated. Like for us, we homeschool, so that that allows us to have a lot
Right.
more control of that. I
Yeah.
in my homeschool days, I don't use any like video aids for the stuff I teach them. Like we listen to like a composer on one day a week, and we listen to like a hymn another day a week. So it's like that's the only time I use technology. My wife will, when she teaches nature study, she'll take them outside some days, and some days she'll show them a video. So it's not largely dependent on technology, and I think that that's
Yeah.
great because there's so much knowledge that you can either download from the internet or you can get from books. Like you don't need to actually be actively engaged in the use of the technology to do it. And whenever you send your kids to school, that is totally taken out of your control, and
Hmm.
the technology becomes integral to their education. And whenever it becomes integral to their education, there's going to be either you supervising them using technology all the time, or you have to take your eye off the ball so you can do anything else. And that's whenever those things that you're not really comfortable with start to come in. And I don't know. I feel like such a, I don't know, like a Bible thumper. Like I'm not the most like religious person at all. Like, I'm a Christian. I believe in God, but outside of that, like I'm not pushing religious views on my kids all the time. I want them to believe in God. I want them to believe in higher power, but I don't want to be like, you can't be on social media because that's not Christly or whatever. But I feel like that sometimes because it's become so normal for your kids to be able to consume whatever they want. And that to me feels wrong. It feels like I feel like I should be the one in charge of this. Like I should be filtering stuff out. And I even feel at that, like just with me filtering everything, I feel like they get enough bad exposure to like, and being like hypersexualization, like inappropriate humor, body image stuff, like that's with me filtering it. Like I can't imagine the
Right.
kids who just get unabated access to technology and wireless internet all the time.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's scary. It's like, to this may be to an extreme, and I don't mean this in a way to like uh, actually, I'm gonna ask you first, and then maybe you can cut this out if not. But
Sure.
can I mention porn or no? Since your daughter listens,
No,
like
that's fine. Like
okay, okay,
we don't really talk about it, but I
yeah,
think she knows enough about the world to understand what we're talking
right,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, I don't want to like make this bad, but like,
Yeah.
you think about like you're mentioning, the like unlimited like accessibility and that kind of thing that some children have, and it's scary because of like strangers on the internet that can like totally take advantage of that, and they totally do. Like that is out there. And then there's also like all this other stuff that like young impressionable children are taking in, like porn and like stuff like they're seeing that children are having sex at much younger ages, and like those kinds of experiences are happening at much younger ages than previous generations and that kind of thing. And like if the first sexual things that they're like being exposed to and that kind of thing are like very unrealistic like
Hmm.
portrayals of that, that's already damaging to the brain before they're even doing anything sexual. Whether
Yeah.
that's holding hands, well, holding hands isn't really sexual, but like, kissing and like
Romantic, or yeah.
romantic. Yeah, I'm like, what's the word?
Well, I mean, and
And it's
they're
like,
being jumped over romantic straight into sexual
yeah,
because that's what they're seeing if they're having,
yeah,
if they're being exposed to that stuff. And like that happened to me in my childhood, is that I found my father's tapes hanging out, and that's my first exposure to
yeah,
something that was like graphic. And I like honestly, for the love of everything, wish I could take that back, because it was like the end of innocence for me. And like
hmm,
I was hypersexualized even before that, but that just took it even further to like a much farther degree, to where objectification of of women's bodies, and like uh not respecting people was a big problem for me. Like, even not a big problem even recently, but it was still a problem that I still have to like, I have to keep checking in on. Like, that's something that shaped who I am as a person. And like,
yeah,
I, for the love of God, wish it was not. I wish that that was
yeah,
something that was off the table, because there's enough problems without like thinking that people aren't people, that they're body parts. And that's
yeah,
it's a terrible way to feel whenever you look back on how you've treated people in the past, and you're like, wow, that was me objectifying a person. That was me being a misogynist. Like, I, you talked about like comparing yourself, or comparing your partners to like past partners, or your partner. Yeah, you were talking about comparing your partner to like past partners. What I do is compare myself to myself as a partner. And
mm,
as a
yeah,
partner in the past, I had been such a terrible person, even earlier in this relationship, but all the relationships before that. I was like controlling, and I was misogynistic, and like I was hypersexualized, and I treated people in a terrible, terrible way, because I didn't know any better. Like, I'm definitely a know better, do better type person. I didn't know better. I was raised in a house where the love was not present, like not
yeah,
for me, but between the adults. And that it left a lot of space for me to assign what love looked like.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I did, and it looked all wrong. And like,
yeah,
yeah, that's something that I'm very passionate about admitting, is that I was never a good partner to anybody I was with before my wife. And it's really hard to deal with, because I don't talk to any of those people anymore. And for a long time, I was like, man, I don't understand how people stay friends when they break up. And it's like, oh, because maybe they weren't in toxic relationships like I was. Like I was the toxic one. Like, that's yeah, that's a lot.
yeah, yeah. It's like there's so much out there, and then it's like, you take it even like a step further, and like I feel that I'm very like passionate, not maybe not obviously not the most like knowledgeable in the subject, the topic, the field of like sex work in general, but like you take it a step further, and there's like other ways to like consume that media if it is something that you do enjoy, like going into adult life and that kind of thing,
Hmm.
where it's not certain explicit side that I think we all have looming in the back of our minds of what it's called.
Right.
And like there's children on there, and there's people who are, being what's it called? Like um trafficked for
Yeah.
said videos and that kind of thing. Like none of it is like looked through or anything on that kind of site. And then it's like there's like these so many other like awesome ways you can like consume that stuff that does support sex work in a positive way, that like those people are healthy, they have health insurance, they aren't forced into things, they are maybe a more accurate representation of like what people look like, because it's different types of bodies being like shown in those films and that kind of thing. And it's just like, it's so
Mm.
much more than just like porn is porn and blah blah blah, you know what I mean? Like, okay, like it's a
Yeah.
thing, and like it can be a tool, and it can also be something that is incredibly damaging, like if we're gonna dive into sex health and that kind of thing. Not that we are, like I'm not a
To
professional. But
to
like,
be totally transparent, like me and my wife were having a conversation the other day, which
yeah,
like I want to be a really good platform for people to share their stories, but
yeah,
whenever it comes to sex work, like I am totally, I'm not gonna say in the dark, but like
hmm,
I don't want it to be assumed that like I either disagree with or agree with your stance, because like I am
no, totally,
totally undecided about how that is. And I just want to make sure that
yeah,
people who are listening know, like, I want Kalyn to be able to talk about the things that she's passionate about, because I think that she deserves a platform to do so. I'm not going to silence her about talking about the importance of sex work, because I think she has more information than I do, that's for sure, and I don't have a stance on it. So I'm just
yeah,
gonna, I'm just letting that be set out there, because I'm still trying to figure some of my life out. Like
yeah.
I'm definitely not gonna pretend like I've got it all figured out. And that's one
None
of
of
those
us do.
things that I know can be very divisive. I don't want people to
Yeah,
say like, well, you know, Bruce didn't say anything supporting sex work, so we can't, or he did. Like I'm just letting you share your side of it, and I want you to
yeah.
know that the space is open for you to do so. I'm just saying that I don't have anything to offer to it.
No, that's totally cool. Like I I feel like I told you earlier, like, oh my gosh, like I could just dive into that for hours. Like it's just like the topic in general is just fun for me to dive into in all different realms. And
Hmm.
like, I don't know. I feel like just whenever I get on the soapbox, it's just me hoping that I'm reaching someone with like, hey, like you being a sexual being, like overall, like you being a sexual being is a normal thing. That isn't something that should be shamed. And I feel like that's kind of like the biggest like passion that I have. And like it's something I still navigate for myself, where I can find myself like feeling shame for like whatever thing, or like questioning like, why does my partner like that thing, or like, oh, like I have this friend and they like this thing but I don't like it, is there something wrong with me? Like, we're all so different, all so unique, and we all have like such different journeys with even just navigating that in the world in general. But again, like particularly in the US, and like how how not great sex education typically is for most people and that kind of thing. And so I feel like that's
Yeah.
just kind of where I'm coming from. Not really
Hmm.
from like a judgment, no, definitely not from a judgment standpoint is how I should
I
emphasize it. But
can come
like,
out and support you in saying that, like, we do make people feel bad for being sexual, period, in America.
yeah,
I'm in the Bible Belt, so like I'm familiar with that.
hmm,
It's funny because we hypersexualize everything, but then at
right?
the same time we make you feel bad for feeling sexual about things, which is super
What is
confusing.
that?
And like it's a surprise. I'm confused, but like I'm trying to like separate myself from the hypersexualization of my childhood and find a safe, comfortable relationship with sexuality, because I
Yeah,
know that it's important. It is part of who we are meant to be as humans. Like I think that we were built the way that we are for a reason, and exploring that is part of the joy of life. But there is a healthy way, and I'm still trying to find that balance. Like, and
yeah,
I
of
hope anybody
course.
who's out there who's struggling with that is is finding a way to do that safely and
Yeah,
and healthy and balanced.
yeah. It's a scary thing to
And I
navigate.
think I
And then
lost
like if we
Kaylin
loop it
again.
all, what was that? Um, but yeah, if we just like, loop it all back into, you know, navigating that with children, like, what do we do? How do we make it something that isn't like you literally can't like avoid all of it, like how you were mentioning with like, even with what you are able to filter with your kids, like they still see stuff that
Oh yeah.
unfortunately like you can't hide. And it's like, how do we go about all of this, and how do we make sure everyone's okay? And it's unfortunate that unfortunately we can't. make everything okay all the time. You know what I mean? Uh-oh. Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we're here. Okay. Okay, it's starting to record.
Perfect.
I love all the different scene changes you've had.
I know that's gonna be really, really so much fun for you to edit.
Yes. You know what? You know what's good,
if you need any
though?
help.
What's good is
What?
that you like the changing of the scenes has been with the things that have gone wrong. So I'll be able to just like whenever I'm going through the video, I'll be able to scrub through and it's like, oh, scene change. I know that there's something went wrong, so I need to go back and see where it was. Because honestly, I can't stand. I don't know if you can. I can't stand listening to myself whenever I go back through and edit. Like I'm like, oh my god, please shut up. I can't. I hate my voice.
It's gotten a little easier for me because I started out doing Audacity first before this platform, and I had to listen through it because there was no other way, and it totally like desensitized me to hearing my own voice, and now I'm just kind of like, it's just another voice. But before that, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna implode.
Well, my wife is she is a VA and she works does a podcast notes and stuff for me, and it is for one super helpful. But having her in the house listening to the podcast, doing notes, I'm like, do you have to listen with your ears? Could you maybe not, because I can hear myself and I want to go. Which honestly, it's not what I say. Like I like what I say. It's hearing myself say it. That's I support the things I say. I stand behind them, but hearing my actual voice saying them, I would rather not.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, maybe that means you're humble. You're not totally self-absorbed. There's an element of self-love and an element of like, hey, like I'm a cool person. Like that's the good part. It's the not being self-absorbed part that I think is probably a good sign.
Yeah, I hope that you're right. I hope that is the sign of of a little bit of humility. I don't know though. I think it's just I think my voice sounds weird. Okay, so through all of our different issues we've had today, I think that we've had a pretty great conversation. I'm probably gonna have to do more editing for this particular episode of the podcast than I've ever had to do. Not for content necessarily, then just for one, the sheer amount of time we've been on. Like my other static recording says we're almost about 3 hours right now. And that is,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like a lot of that time has been trying to figure out different parts of the recording platform while stuff has gone wrong. But it's been a pretty good conversation that has kind of just taken us away. And I did not realize it had been that long. It's starting to get dark out here. I'm like, oh.
I know, same here.
So if while I still got you, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to share?
I feel like we covered it. I mean, with all the different, playing fields that we encountered, like I feel like my little, public service announcement is like I could seriously talk about each and every one of those different things like for hours. Might not be the most profound or the most well informed, but it's stuff that I think about and it's always rattling around up in here. So I'm just glad we got to, cover that wide variety of topics. Like it's just nice to get to find common ground with other people and hear one another out. And like I loved when you would say this is something I don't know as much about, and I'm like, you respect there, obviously there's plenty of stuff I don't know as much about with when you came on and talked about the job and workplace journey that you had and navigating that, that's totally not an experience I could relate to that degree, because I'm not a man and I'm not black and I'm not big. We come from two totally different understandings, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even just man and woman, totally different worlds, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was just cool to get to hear your perspective. It's so helpful to just hear a guy's perspective sometimes, even like, oh, like if I need some relationship advice, if I'm really like, why does he not understand like why I'm feeling this way, I'll ask a guy, I'll ask my brother, like, you know what I mean? And I would hope to, you know, any men that are listening here, that is a great piece of advice for you if you are having that same thought with any kind of like tiff you're having with a gal in your life. Maybe don't go to your buddies for advice. Maybe go to another girl for some advice.
Let's be more specific. Go to a trusted woman. Don't go talk to the like the girl who answers the phone at your office who happens to be good looking. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Talk to her sister. Talk to somebody who knows one or both of you well. And yes, hearing a woman's perspective on how to deal with women can be very helpful. Now, is that going to make you a woman and be able to deal with it like a woman? Unlikely, but just being able to see the other side from somebody who's not mad at you is super helpful. And I definitely agree with that perspective. I often am like, what do I do with this? It's so hard. Like, though, I usually end up just asking her when she's not mad. Is like, so how could I have handled that better? And you know that goes over pretty well. Like I think that open communication between couples is like way under stressed. Like I didn't, I talked about the model that I had growing up, and I didn't realize how much you actually need to physically talk to actually like be on the same page with your partner. Like there's a lot of actual talking. So now every Sunday we sit down together and we make sure that we have like the serious talk. We call it Sunday Talkie Time, and it's like, hey, what's been going on with you this week? Like, is there anything that I did that you want to talk about? That is there a way I need to improve on the way we're living our life together, whatever? And I share the same, and it has improved considerably my ability to like understand whenever I'm messing up, because otherwise it's like, if you in the moment when you're angry, it always feels like you're being chastised, and that a lot of growth doesn't really come from that place. So anyways, that's
good
another
to go
tangent.
from a neutral. Yes, I know, we're over here like, let's dive in more, but I'm over here, I'm like, well, there's pizza in my fridge and I really want to eat it.
Oh, that sounds delicious. My food's like, my kitchen smells like food and I'm starving. So where can people get more if they're interested in Kalyn Bree?
Yeah. Okay. I totally forgot that this is even an element of like guessing on a podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, I get to like share social media and stuff. I'm like, oh, we're so professional. Well, first, I guess for starters, my podcast is What Do We Call This Podcast? I know Bruce mentioned that at the beginning. Maybe also type in With Kalyn Bree. I'm not really sure how it's popping up with searching so far. It might be, it's not like popping off like some of the other podcasts that are out there by any means, but like maybe.
Are you only on Spotify?
Yeah, still just on Spotify. I recently tried to do Apple Podcasts, and I saw that you have to pay to like do it, and I was like, oh shoot, like. Really?
That must be a Spotify specific thing.
No. For Apple Podcasts, I was like trying to do it. I just don't know if I'm not looking into it correctly. Maybe you and I can talk about that later.
I'll help you out with that. You should know.
Okay. Yeah. I was like I tried to do it months ago, and I was like, this is so frustrating. Anyways, not trying to shit on Apple Podcasts. I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. I literally never know what's happening. I'm just like letting the wind take me where it goes.
Yeah, but, like I told you the other night, like I deep dove into every aspect of this, and I'm basically a podcast production professional, even though like I still can't get my life right. Like I learned so much in like RSS feeds and like podcatchers and so much different stuff, and like how hosting a podcast works. The Spotify for podcasters or Anchor method seems like the easiest for getting a podcast out, but then getting it on all the places. I feel like it makes it a little difficult, a little more difficult.
Yeah.
I can help you out with that. Anyway, so that's your podcast. Yeah. Where are you at on social media?
Yeah. So still just on Spotify, working on the other platforms though. Let's see. If you want to check out my I think I predominantly share stuff on Instagram with Reels. Gonna be making a TikTok soon because I know that can be helpful. I just need to stop consuming it. But Instagram, you can follow like some of our travel stuff as well as like the podcast Reels that I post. It'll be at KALYN.BREE at Kalyn.Bree. I have like a little bit of an Instagram podcast situation, but I think I have a better strength keeping like the lifestyle podcast thing mixed together. So I think I'm going to stay there. So there's like 3 podcast things on that other Instagram that's mentioned in the bio, but if I were you, I'd just ignore it. I think it's all going to just merge together. I should probably just remove it, but whatever.
You never.
Again, me just flying with the wind. But yeah, that's where I'm at, you know, Spotify for now, and then Instagram. That's all I got.
Hey, as long as you stick to it and you keep putting stuff on it, it'll be enough.
Yeah.
So, man, it's been a bit of a marathon conversation. So it probably won't be the 3 hours that we've experienced it together. Or we're probably going to trim that down considerably. But I've enjoyed all of it, even the technical difficulties. And to Kalyn, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and kind in sharing your story and being vulnerable and opening up, and it's been amazing.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had a blast.
Absolutely. And to my audience, if you enjoyed today's episode, please give a review, a follow, share it with someone you think might enjoy it as well. Also, you can support the future creation of great content by checking out other episodes. Like, all of the episodes are standalone. You don't have to listen to them in any order if you don't want to. All of the guests have been amazing. I think that they all have something unique to offer, so you should go check them out. And if you want to, go check me out on social media. I'm at Authentic Identity Management on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and LinkedIn. And you can also head over to the Authentic Bruce YouTube channel for podcast video, bonus content, and impactful clips from my conversation with these guests. Remember, if you guys are wanting to take me up on my offer from earlier, and it seems like days ago in this episode, to go to the episode 17 reflection post and comment either help, step 1, step 2, and I will reach out to you and we'll have a conversation, because I'd love to help you. And if you are anybody else who is struggling to show up as yourself in your content, your work, your family, or your life, I'd love to help you. Authentic Identity Management does identity coaching to help you align yourself with the identity you share with the world. It's exhausting to live someone else's life. Live authentically and access the potential that belongs only to you. You can contact me on social or email at bruce@authenticidentitymanagement.com, and we can set up a free 30-minute consultation. And that is it for today's episode. It has been amazing. Kalyn, thank you so much. To my audience, be yourself and love yourself. Bye, everybody.